We will start with the minutes from the November 5th meeting, 2012. Any comments, corrections, or adjustments? We don't have any. Can we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed?
Aye.
Thank you. The minutes are approved. We're going to start this evening with agenda item number 1, 229 and 255 West Wayne Avenue, final application SD 2012 SD03, consolidation of 2 lots into 1, demolishing out the old buildings, construction of 6 townhouse units with parking and access driveways. Originally submitted 11/2/12. The applicant is here, and we will turn it over to you for your presentation. Thank you, gentlemen. We had Cabrini up first. Are we doing Cabrini first? We went back and forth on this. Do you want to do Cabrini first? What did we decide? Let's do Darden first. There was a scheduling problem. I know somebody had a scheduling problem. So you wanted to do Cabrini first?
I'd like, if possible, yes.
But you have to leave early, so it would be better for you to do Cabrini. No, it doesn't matter. Are you sure?
I'm positive.
Okay. Then we'll stay as stated. So I apologize to anyone who thought Cabrini was going to be first. We will do West Wayne first. Are you guys ready to go first? You okay?
Great.
Thank you. David, all yours.
Dave Fiorello from Omni and Associates. I think I was elected to present the plans tonight, which are basically the engineered plans of the preliminary plans that you had seen before. The preliminary plans were approved, I believe, back in September. We have provided the full engineering plans, basically with the layout that was approved the first time around. So there's no changes in the layout. We have the same waiver requests, and we have a copy of the engineer's letter that goes through some comments. The majority, I'd say 95% of the comments are detail and note related. I don't know if you want me to go through those issues or discuss anything in particular with the board.
Dave, I think what you can do, if you can hit the highlights of any changes in the plan since we saw it the last time as a preliminary, and then we can go over to the engineering letter, and then we can address any issues that are still open. I think it would be the easiest way.
As I mentioned, there are no changes to the plans relative to the layout, the impervious cover, the buildings, anything else. What we've provided is all the engineering details, the stormwater management design, and maybe that's one of the things that if the board is interested in. Our previous design had shown a stormwater management system over in this corner, and over here we had additional percolation tests done behind this unit here and have a seepage recharge rate control system in the back in addition to the one in the front under the driveway. We've provided the design for the sanitary sewer extension, the storm sewer profiles. We have a lighting plan for the parking lot. Basically, the lighting plan is 2 fixtures outside the building that will illuminate the parking lot. The engineer did have a comment on the lighting plan, and I have a question relative to that comment. In the engineer's review, item 2.1 mentioned that wrong. I had the letter for the other one. Comment was raised about the lighting plan. The lighting plan must demonstrate compliance with SALDO sections 255, 94B, 1 and 2. As I read the ordinance, they refer to the Garrett Hill zoning district, and I'm not sure if they're applicable to this section. We're providing Fixtures, we have shown the Isolux diagrams that show that the foot candles for the fixtures don't extend beyond the property. I guess I need a little bit of clarification on whether that section applies to this. To me, it doesn't appear that way. Other than that, a number of the comments are relative to spot elevations to be shown on the plan. We had met with the Shade Tree Commission last week. The Shade Tree Commission had a couple comments, which we haven't had a chance to address on the plans. They will be added. Basically, it was about deep root fertilization of the bald cypress and chain link fencing shall be installed as tree protection, and we will comply with that. Escrow estimates, DEP or County Conservation District approval. We have applied for our NPDS permits for our earth disturbance. They are currently under review. We are waiting for action from them. I think in my opinion, like I said, there are a number of items on the list or in the letter requesting some additional notes. There are notes on some plans that the engineers requested to put on other sheets, and there's other notes that he wants to clarify and some details. We have absolutely no problem with providing them. So other than that, I'll ask for any comments from the board.
Comments from the board or questions for the applicant?
I have one. It's really just a well, it's two things, really. 4 and 5 on page 4 and 5 of the engineer's notes. Just what is the distinction between the additional right-of-way must be provided or a waiver sought versus providing the additional right-of-way for Conestoga Road? What is the subtle difference between 255.27C.2 versus C.4?
I think this brings up the same issue that we discussed at preliminary plan where we had sought waivers and waivers were approved for those.
That's not my question. I'm trying to understand what the difference is between C2 and C4. Is it just the
It's the wording.
It's the wording, specificity of 80 feet of right-of-way versus additional right-of-way?
Yes, and because this is an existing right-of-way, there was some difference in the language in the ordinance, where if it were a new subdivision, and y'all can correct me if I'm wrong, but we kind of fell under 2. We could have fallen under 2, so rather than pick the one we thought we fell under and have the wrong one, we simply put both on. We are either under one or the other. Either it's a new development where we would be applying for a waiver from the overall 80-foot, or we're a development with an existing right-of-way which is less, at which point the Board of Commissioners could require additional to comply with that 80.
Mike, you agree that's what's going on?
Yeah, that's correct.
And then if I could just get confirmation that on page 2, I meant to say this first, the commercial building is reading as 2389 square feet. I thought I remembered that building shrunk and shrunk and shrunk.
It was. It started out close to 2,800 square feet. We shrunk it to 25 or 26, and now it is down. The footprint is 2389, and it is the same as the other. When you figure parking spaces and the other amenities associated with that, you base it on 80% of the footprint to come up with your gross usable area.
No,
I'm not sure if that's what you're referring to.
No, I understand that. I just want confirmation that 2389 was the number that we saw in preliminary plan approval. And that the size of the building, the square footage of that has not changed a square foot.
Has not changed 1 square foot.
Okay. Is that what you have for preliminary?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? Mike, do you have any questions that, as far as your letter is concerned, have not been addressed at this point?
No, most of those items we can work out between us.
I guess my one final question is
Go right ahead.
regarding Shade Tree, only because a different application is coming to mind, so I'm trying to keep this question in the front of my mind. Do we have specific trees marked that will not come down in this plan?
Yes, we do. We have also put together a landscape plan that shows the additional plantings that are being proposed.
Those were my only questions, Ed.
If Dave can put that up, that'd be great. There it is. I think he has it. What sheet is it, Dave? Do we have it here?
This was submitted, Ed, as a separate landscape plan, which should be with the set. One of the engineer's comments was to make it part of the plan set number with it, but you can see that we're adding a substantial number of trees and shrubs throughout the site. Yes, the one that was submitted was black and white. We didn't have the color one when we made the application. We have that for you tonight.
And that shows
That shows
Right.
what is proposed.
proposed.
Yes.
So you don't have one that shows the existing, what's being taken out?
I'm looking for the existing trees that are staying.
There are a couple existing trees along the perimeter. The bald cypress is the one in the front that the Shade Tree Commission had concerns about. We're saving those. Because the site was at one time all greenhouses, this area in the center is pretty much open. So really, the couple pine trees in the front, the one walnut tree, and a couple of the trees along the perimeter will be upgraded.
Thank you.
Just a point of clarification. Yeah, I've read through the engineer's letter, and I understand that there's no major changes, but there are so many tiny, small things in here. I would just like some clarification that you're in agreement with all of these
We
suggestions?
are in agreement with all those items.
Okay.
I
read through them, and nothing seemed earth-shattering, but there's a lot of them.
There are a lot of them are, again, requests for notes to clarify a few things. Like I said, there are some notes on one sheet that they should be put on the stormwater management plan, vice versa, a couple signature blocks, and some engineering details about sidewalk slopes and spot elevations and things like that. And as it was said, they are what I would call dotting the i's and cross the t's type of engineering comments that can be worked
Dave,
back
on
and forth.
page 7, paragraph 11, they're talking about the water utility, and it says it's not been addressed. Is that an issue? Is there a problem with the water?
I don't understand that because that letter was submitted as part of the application form. So we do have a letter from the Aqua, Pennsylvania. I can provide that to
Okay,
the
good.
engineer, but that was submitted in my application package to the township. It was spelled out in my cover letter that it was included. So I'm
Gotcha.
not, maybe the engineer didn't get a copy of it when he reviewed it.
But there's no issue that we know
There's
of?
no
that
issue
there's-
with that. We have
Okay.
approval from Aqua
Great.
for water service.
Again, okay, skip right ahead.
I have a question for the engineer. The 14-page letter in the last paragraph basically says that you do not recommend final plan approval until such time as remaining review comments herein have been addressed. But tonight, I got the impression that you're not quite on that same page. Can you clarify that statement?
Yeah, there are several comments, and until we hear from the applicant saying that they're willing to comply with our comments, we're not going to recommend approval until they say that they're okay with addressing all of our comments. So that's basically where that comes from.
I think we're here tonight saying that we'll address all those comments.
Until we hear from them,
Is this good enough, or do you want it in writing? I can write you a letter right now. In fact, I do have a letter with me that I can give to the board. I address the comments in that letter. I didn't know if it was proper to present it tonight, but I do have that letter stating how all those items will be addressed, and that we will address all those items.
that's fine.
That's okay with you, Mike?
Yeah, that's fine.
Good. Thank you. Any other questions, the applicant or engineering? I'll open up for public comment. Do you want to come forward, ma'am? Hi.
I'm Susan Misk, I'm a neighbor. I just have a general question. Not having seen this come up to the zoning board, at least not for a long time. I just want to be assured that there are no variances being requested, either for setbacks or height restrictions. Thank you.
We are not requesting any zoning relief with respect to this project.
Right.
So,
Thank you. Any other public comment? Any other discussion? Comments, questions?
Can you just refresh my memory? The building was very close to the commercial. How far away did you ultimately get the residential from the commercial building?
I believe it was 16 and a half feet.
16 and a half is what it's going to be.
I believe, I have to double-check the plans. I don't
That-
wanna
that
be
is
put on the
correct.
record, but I believe it's 16 and a half.
Okay.
David, that's correct.
Okay.
I just couldn't tell on the plan. I
Thank
wanted
you.
to be reminded.
If you look at that first plan, Susan, it shows 16 and a half.
You can read that? Oh,
Yeah.
I'm looking at page 2. I can't
On
see
page
that.
1, the first cover, you see the 16 and a half foot distance in here. Got it. No problem.
The cover shows it.
Any other questions, comments?
One other question. The existing commercial use, is that at this time, this is not precisely germane to the application, but will it continue as the florist shop for now?
I think the applicant can address that. I know he has his architect with him that can discuss that if you wish.
it's the intent that it will remain a flower shop. That's the near term, for sure.
Okay.
Thank you. Anything else? Questions? May I have a motion?
I make a motion to approve the plan, subject to the applicant addressing all of the open issues in the letter.
Second.
Steve made a motion, Julia with a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion carries. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
That takes us to agenda item number 3, 610 King of Prussia Road, a preliminary plan, SD 2012-D16, Cabrini College, to construct 2 parking structures or student commons building-related improvements on campus at 610 King of Prussia Road, Wayne, submitted 8/31/12. Thank you for putting that up as the applicant here. Thank you. Allow us to just shuffle some papers and we will turn the mic over to you.
Good evening. Joanne Seameister for Cabrini College. We're here tonight to request a recommendation for our Gateway project. As you know, we presented our plans to you previously, a sketch plan in August and a preliminary plan in November. And we have received approval from the Shade Tree Committee as well as the Delaware County Planning Commission. Prior to this plan, in 2011, we submitted a different plan where we had 1 parking garage for 711 parking spaces on Eagle Road with an access to Eagle Road. But after a year of challenging meetings with the neighbors and you, we accepted everyone's recommendation and revised the plan to provide for 2 smaller parking structures, one on the south side near Eagle Road with 300 spaces, and one on the north side near Dixon Hall with 370 spaces. As well, the revised or modified plan eliminates the entrance to Eagle Road. So there is no change to our entrance and exit points that presently exist on the campus. That would be King of Prussia and Upper Gulf Road. We've received very favorable support from the neighbors for this modified plan and generally some good feedback from you the last time we were here. And while we've submitted voluminous plans to date for tonight, we would like to focus on the areas of inquiry and the questions you had the last time we were here. Specifically, as to the campus center, you wanted more design details. On the parking counts, you asked that we remove the future phases and confirm the existing spaces. On the south parking structure, you wanted detail on the elevation and facade materials. And on the traffic, you wanted a clarification as to the intersection improvement in our discussion with the Township regarding the King of Prussia and Eagle Road crossroads. To specifically address the concerns, I'd like to introduce Rob Lammert, our engineer from Site Engineering Concepts, and our architect Richard King from WRT, Wallace Roberts, and Todd to go through those points with you.
Good evening, Rob Lambert. I'm going to talk about the first point, the parking questions. Richard's going to talk about the middle two, and then I'll talk about the last one, which was the traffic question. Again, this summarizes what Joanne just listed. These were the 4 points we left the last Planning Commission meeting that identified that we wanted to come back, provide more information. The first will be the parking space counts throughout campus. Subsequent to our last meeting, this is a copy of the plan that was submitted to you. Subsequent to our last meeting, I actually walked the campus, took a look at various areas of parking spaces, took a look at counts. We did identify some discrepancies with the numbers. Some of the older plans that we were using as a base, they weren't accurate. They were maps, kind of images from the old plan. We went through and identified parking. So although on the paper now our existing nonconformity changes, it's just because of the existing number of parking spaces. It doesn't have to do with any use. It was just physically counting the parking spaces that were present on site. I believe you're in receipt of a memorandum dated, I guess yesterday, 12/3/12, from Gilmore and Associates. They had a slightly different count than what I counted when I was out there. I think they have 9 more spaces. We're willing to accept their count. That's fine. We'll add 9 parking spaces. This exhibit shows the green areas are proposed parking and the red areas are removal of parking. So you can see on the bottom of the page we have 310 parking spaces proposed to be constructed, and we're removing 85 parking spaces in this area. So we'll have a net add along the south side. Throughout the center of campus, we're going to be removing 72 parking spaces. In the area of this small turnaround that we're going to provide, we're going to remove 19 parking spaces. In the founder's lot, and this is where one of the discrepancies was when we found some of the numbers, we're proposing to remove 207 parking spaces. As a result of Gilmore's letter, what we'd like to do is remove 9 fewer. And it's actually very simple. It doesn't change our plan at all. In this location, all that we're going to do is instead of decommissioning these 9 parking spaces that are right here, we'll simply make that a double-loaded aisle. We'll leave those 9 parking spaces. So it's really no change in the plan. We're just not going to remove 9 parking stripes. Going over to the Dixon Center and Student Center area, we're going to remove 283 parking spaces that are existing. Really, it's a large surface lot there that we're building over. We're adding 28 spaces, 367 spaces in the parking structure, 15 surface spots adjacent to Dixon, and then 76 surface spots to the north. So that was kind of a summary of where the parking went. It did evolve from the last time we spoke. We'll accept Gilmore's analysis and decommission those 9 fewer spaces. So I'm going to turn over to Richard to talk about some of the elevations.
Why don't we ask, if you don't mind, why don't we go for questions or comments section by section here so we don't have to
Sure.
wait and then come back to parking. So
No
any
problem.
questions from the board or engineering?
I just
Go ahead, Steve.
wanted to confirm with engineering that they're complying with car parking, our requirements for parking?
Based on the numbers that we have, and if they do add those 9 spaces, then yes.
Okay, great.
Are those 9, Mike, crucial then? When
Well,
you
yeah, I mean, they have to meet their existing parking.
Okay.
They have to match what they have out there now. So as long as they're meeting that, then they're fine.
The 76 space lot way up at the top, there was a lot in the talk, if I recall correctly, in the Shade Tree Commission about trees and so forth around that. You want to elaborate?
Going to the next step, one of the things that we're going to really study is that parking lot. If there's a way that we can reduce the number of parking spaces there, can we move some parking spaces around? Possibly, can we look at, we're trying to create some green spaces closer to campus so we don't have this large surface lot here. But, there is a possibility that we add parking back in here to reduce the size of the lot. So there's some small, what I call tweaks to the plan. It's not going to change the plan substantively. but those are the tweaks that we're looking at that Shade Tree asked us to look at as we move forward. Part of Shade Tree, they also asked us to hire an arborist to go through and do an evaluation of our trees. We had that meeting scheduled on the snow day, so he had to cancel on us. We've rescheduled that meeting actually for this Friday.
So I just want to confirm, this sheet here is still showing the existing nonconformity of 939. You'll update this all to match what Gilmore and Associates comes up with, meaning your existing parking spaces will now show 932, and your existing nonconformity will decrease to 930.
Correct.
Okay.
We just got this letter this
No,
afternoon.
as did we. So I just wanted to confirm that we could expect in the future to see this updated for
Yes.
all plans.
Yes.
Okay.
When we go into final, we'll have it all updated.
Skip, go ahead.
One quick question, the proposed additions, the additional parking, the 123 and the 7, that would be, if that were in a vacuum, that would be in full compliance with our parking requirements?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
Any other questions on parking?
So for a period of time, they'll have a lower existing nonconformity. Is that my understanding of this?
This is all really going to be built as one project. We can't snap our fingers and have it built in one day.
Right.
But so it will be evolving with this project. This project won't be complete until it's all built out.
I'm sorry, so this does reflect the future phases that we asked you to take out.
We removed those from this.
But you're building the parking to accommodate that those future phases?
The irony, and I believe this is why you wanted them taken out, is the irony of those future phases, we actually had a reduction of 10 parking spaces required because of those buildings, because of the way the infills and the calculations worked. We actually had a reduction in 10 spaces. So theoretically, if everything stayed neutral, we'd actually be able to remove 10 spaces by doing those improvements.
In the comments from Gilmore, they made reference to some illegal parking that's taking place. Are your planned construction for parking, sometimes people park illegally because there's not enough space, which an existing nonconformity of this size would suggest that could be the case here, although I've been told anecdotally that parking in reality is not really much of an issue on this campus. So I'm wondering if the illegal parking spaces are a result of there's just some places people park because they're particularly convenient to buildings and there doesn't happen to be parking there. Is some of your parking going to address some of that illegal parking?
I think one of the illegal spaces, I looked through their memo also, and I'd be curious, I would bet if you asked the person that went out there that there was extra parking. There were empty spots throughout campus. One of the illegal spaces that they referred to was a parking space right here by the East Dormitory, rather. And it's basically in a loading area. My guess is it was probably a facilities truck or something like that. They parked close to go work on the building. They did mention some parking spaces on the grass. I don't know what the situation was, why somebody parked there. Cabrini tries to police the parking on campus, and we're not going to stop everything, but they do police parking and try to create parking. This plan does create parking in convenient areas. We're not going to encourage students to drive from one side of the campus to the other, some do today. The whole purpose of this plan is to create a pedestrian-friendly campus. And if you look at the core of the campus, we're really creating this pedestrian area where there won't be any cars. And so your convenience parking about pulling up in front of I think actually one of the parking spaces was up in the center of campus. They're not going to have that ability to even be there.
As long as we're still on parking, last question. My recollection is that Cabrini at this time does not allow freshmen to have cars on campus? Or is that a different institution?
Yeah, hello, I'm Howard Holden, Director of Facilities. Yes, we do not allow freshmen to park on campus unless they have significant need. Some have to work in order to provide their tuition.
Because this partially speaks to the fact that, you know, you have this substantial nonconformity, and it works partially because 25% of the student body is restricted. So I just have just voicing a concern, that's all.
Any other questions? Then we'll move on to point number 2.
To be honest,
Oh,
I have
sorry,
a
Peter.
question I'm a bit confused by.
Sure.
The 207 spaces, that big lot you're removing,
Yes.
what's going on there?
In the interim, we don't have a plan. We're actually going to just remove that, whether the school, I envision it during construction, when we get into the construction logistics during final, that it's going to be used for construction, you know, parking, contractor parking, staging, all those pieces during construction. When we get through all that construction, by that time, we'd be hoping to come back for you for the dining center and the Grace Hall improvements that we were discussed in our long-range plan. And so at that time, again, that area will probably be reused. And at that time, we're probably going to be proposing something after those construction improvements. So right now, it's just going to remain an empty asphalt area.
Okay, so how are you removing those spaces? Are you going to fence it off, chain it off? How are you going to prevent people from parking there?
We're going to remove all the striping. We've talked about putting up some temporary fencing for that time while it's still paved. We don't have a set plan for that area.
And are these spaces being removed so that you don't increase the amount of parking or decrease your nonconformity?
Well, what we'd like to do is eventually completely remove that area. But again, looking at the long-range plan that we've submitted to you, the institutional development plan, we know that the dining center improvements that are in that long-range plan and the Grace Hall improvements will require our temporary construction, you know, contractor parking, things like that, while we're under construction. So we would like to reutilize that area. You know, if there's a year gap in between, you know, whether we put up a basketball net or something for student use is to be determined. But right now, we plan just to fence it off, leave it the way it is.
So you're not, even in the future under your 5-year plan, you're not planning to construct anything else there permanently, and you're not proposing to remove the asphalt permanently.
Correct.
You're just right now just proposing to remove it from your parking counts, and you might use it for other uses, but that's all you're proposing.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Which is why I was asking before, so for a period of time, I mean, with all due respect, unless you fence it off, simply removing striping won't stop people from parking there. So
We can fence it off. It's.
I'm just saying, you are going to be decreasing your nonconformity for a period of time.
That is not our intent, and with the plan that's recorded, and I'll let Peter disagree with me if he does, but with the recorded plan, we're showing a course of action to maintain our existing nonconformity.
Okay, and all the calculations, and this is a question for the engineers, when we look at all the impervious calculations for this project, where does this lot that's supposed to be getting removed but is in fact not actually being removed, how does that factor into all the calculations?
It's shown as existing impervious.
You did show it as existing. Yep. Okay.
We don't change it. We're not doing anything to it. It's
okay.
We're trying to plan. We're trying to do proper planning and look ahead. Is what we're trying to do.
Any more parking questions? We will move to point number 2.
Hi, everyone. Good to see you again. I'm Richard King with WRT. There were some remaining questions about the campus center at the end of our last meeting because there was an item in the engineer's letters indicating that the building was too long. So we have revised that. This is the plan that was submitted. We're just going to zoom in a little bit so you can see there were 2 issues in question. One was the distance between the campus center and the new proposed parking structure, and that distance is 46.5 feet. And the other question was to confirm the length of the campus center, and the campus center will be 160 feet long, at the absolute most, including the rear view mirrors, if there are any. Then you asked us to provide you with some preliminary elevations. This was the sheet that was submitted. That's a little bit small for the screen, so we're just blowing those up for you. The image that you see across the bottom is a section. I'm just going to jump back so you can understand where the section is cut. That section is cut, if you follow the arrow, it is cut through along here. And it's looking down at the campus center and at the parking structure, so you can see both of them together. So the campus center is on the left side, and the new parking structure is on the right side. The campus center, you can see I've put the perspective above it. The materials for that include some stone walls that match the historic stone on the campus. There will be a portion of the front facade which is very glassy and transparent because it's a campus center, so it's envisioned as a place that brings a lot of life to the campus that you can see through. You can see a nice open space in front of the campus center, and that there is a proposed cafe that would be at this critical spot in the campus to provide some nice outdoor seating. And then the remainder of the facade that you can see further down to the right that I'm pointing to with the arrow, there are some multi-purpose spaces that would be used for different functions on the campus, gatherings, banquets, etc. That space would probably have a stone and glass facade that would be similar in character to what you would find on the rest of the campus.
The picture up on the top left, that is of the large piece on the left, or is
yes, the corner that you're seeing is right here in that image. And this piece is further down.
All right, thank you.
And then the north parking structure, which you see on the right, the glass piece here on the corner is here, and then there is a section of stone, again, to connect it back to and to respect the other buildings on the campus, so that that threshold that where one passes into the garage has that historic stone on it, in order to make the building a little more cost effective, because it still is a parking structure. We've developed what will likely be precast panels so that it be a warm tone. We're hoping that we can get some warm tones that are tree-like in a way, so that it can blend into the beautiful trees on the campus as much as we can, given that it's a parking structure. And the base of that would as much as we can, would hopefully be as much of the stone that would match the rest of the campus as we could afford. And you can see also the open space here. The intent is that really as you come out of that parking structure, you're in a nice open space on the campus, and really this whole area is a new quad for the campus and a new threshold into the campus. The next item that you asked about was to provide a little bit more information on the south parking structure. As you know, we've removed the entrance from Eagle Road. There was a question about the scale of it and its appearance. Again, we provided you a general drawing of that in the set. It's a little small for the screen here, so we've blown that up. That image is across the bottom, and what we've also done is we've cleared away some of the trees so you can see how the building would look if there were no trees, or almost very few trees. The intent for the structure is this is a precast structure, so it is a very straightforward parking garage, but the intent is that the upper level would be we would have a pattern on the concrete. It would be colored so that it could be like a consistent masonry appearance, so that it would look like a brick, so it would fit in with some other parts of the campus. The base of that garage, which is essentially there to meet the requirement of shielding all of the lights of the cars, comes up to about 42 inches in height, and that will have a stone treatment that is either a pattern that we put in the concrete or a historic stone wall, depending on what we can achieve. We've cleared away all the plantings here so you can see it, see the whole garage. Again, as I've mentioned on other occasions, this garage is intended to follow the slope of the ground, so you'll notice in this elevation that the garage actually has a subtle slope as it moves from the east edge of the site to the west. And that allows us to create a consistent height for the garage, which is 14 feet. So the garage will never be more than 14 feet in height. That's to the top of the guardrail, which would be 42 inches above the top surface of the garage.
As a matter of interest, what's the clearance from the bottom to the underside of the upper deck? 9 feet?
The total height from one floor to the next is about 10 feet 2 inches. That is the absolute minimum that our parking specialist will allow us to make the structure. We've tried to make it shorter than that, but he keeps telling me niet. So we'll have, that is where we're standing now at 10 foot 2, which is the lowest we can get it.
Now, the slab on the bottom, that's basically at grade, is that correct?
That is on grade, yes.
All right. And so the
what you-
the piece up at the top is going to stick 3.5 feet, maybe 42 inches above
Correct. That's correct.
to block the headlights.
Correct. And what we're showing here, you see the gray band at the bottom, which is the spandrel that conceals the parking. The bottom of that is the slab of the garage. So it's possible that as we get into more detail, we could pull the grade up on that so it's even less visible, so it's a little bit of a berm that allows us to get some more planting further up on that. But we wanted to show you, and this is the raw pieces and what they are. But obviously, as we get to do the planting scheme, we can do, I think, some more to conceal more of that. But we've managed to get it down to about a 14-foot consistent height.
So what you're looking for is if you were looking out the second floor window of one of the dorms at Eastern, across the street, that's what it would look like without the trees.
Without trees, if there were no trees, yes.
But we're not going to see that, are we?
We're not, because there's no way on God's green earth that Howard Holden is going to let that happen.
How long is the building?
The building itself is about 800 feet long, and then the ramps are a little bit longer. They're about 50 to 60 feet each, approximately. And so the building stops there. The ramp continues up past it to there.
But it's a structure, not a building, right?
That sketch
It's a structure, yes.
is a little deceiving, right? Because the bottom of the parking garage is going to be much higher from the road, correct? I look at the elevations, it's almost 25 to 28 feet. That kind of looks like it's 12 to 15 feet. In other words, from a car's point of view, when you look at, driving down Eagle Road, when you look to the side, you're not going to see this garage.
No, you're not.
Because you're 28 feet up and way back, so it's...
Well, there's a couple of issues relative to what you see from a car. The grading over there is kind of wonky. As the slope comes down toward Eastern, toward Eagle Road, it's probably about 4 feet to 3 feet, depending on where you are, there's a berm. And right now there's a little bit unkept, but there's actually some lovely rhododendrons along that edge. And the closer you get to Paul Road, there's actually almost a field of rhododendrons underneath the trees. The intent is for us to continue that rhododendron pattern as an understory planting and complete more of an evergreen understory planting as much as possible beyond what is required from the township standpoint for shielding parking spaces, which has a significant buffer by itself. But the intent is to really see that rhododendron understory as the traditional historic planting for the campus. What that would do, given the height, and I'm not going to squat like I'm sitting in my car, but my head is usually only about 4 feet off of the ground, so it would do quite a bit to shield that from drivers. And rhododendrons can be packed fairly densely, so we're fairly confident, while there will be, of course, some time before the rhododendrons mature. They do mature a lot faster than trees in that sense, so that's encouraging in terms of really restoring that whole hillside, which is the intent of this as well, to make it a restored hillside.
Thank you.
I still have an issue with the design. I think that, what you just said about the rhododendrons, and obviously there's a lot of trees there, and that's going to continue. A lot of them are deciduous, which is the native vernacular. But the fact that this building is 800 feet long, because we don't have a better ordinance to prevent such a thing, is going to be a problem. And the fact that it's so long is going to make it much more prominent than a smaller building would be behind all those trees, because your eye's going to, it's going to look industrial, is my concern. So I think that another element that we need to add apart from the screening, and the more screening the better, I think we all would agree to that, is that we need to break up the visual line of that 800 feet. That's a straight line, and they're big, heavy straight lines. There's the upper concrete barrier part, the lower concrete, it's big, huge stripes up above when you're driving down Eagle Road. And it's incredibly long. There's nothing like it anywhere else around. This is very different, and it's going to look much more powerful than you think because it is so long. And there's got to be a way, architecturally, without changing the length of the building, because I don't think our code allows that, but architecturally and using, some good design, there has to be a better way to break that up.
Well, I'm just thinking back to because when we were developing the scheme for the previous garage, we had looked at, breaking that facade up. If you recall, we had some bridges involved in the structure to reduce the apparent length. And we've included one of those in this structure. So you can see here it is broken. It is, not to undermine, it still will be an 800-foot building or structure. And so there are no parking spaces in that zone. It's pushed back. That can be planted so that we can make if we plant that heavily, we can try and break that. We can study for detailed design, spreading that a bit more. Or if we wanted to add another notch further down to split it into 3 pieces visually, that's something that we could also do as part of detailed design. And again, if we provide those notches and we're able to plant those notches so that we can create a real contrast with some vertical planted elements and break those into 3 pieces, we can probably go a long way to addressing that concern, which we're not insensitive to the issue. So I suspect if we did that, we could actually go a long way to breaking that facade up.
Any other questions on the buildings? Skip?
I just wanted to clarify one thing. I think the new design takes this structure further away from Eagle Road than the first proposal.
That's correct.
How many feet further?
There's two things to bring up. The building is 15 feet further back, further north, away from Eagle Road. The grading change is actually even more. It's another about 25 or 30 feet. So that in terms of disturbance, we're disturbing fewer trees. So yes, the building is further away, but also we're leaving more of an apron of trees as part of it. Because if you recall, the loop road, the campus loop road that goes across the north edge, in the previous scheme, we were bringing that road down below toward Eagle Road. So we were clearing out quite a bit more trees as part of that process. So both the plantings, the current plantings are being maintained, and obviously we'll restore those as part of this, but the building is also a little further back.
And it's also shorter, right?
Sorry?
It's a shorter height.
The total height is much shorter, yes. The previous height was at the limit of 35 feet.
And for everyone in the audience and at home, what was the length of the other building?
The other building was shorter. The original length of it was about 600 feet. So this building is a little bit longer, yes.
Okay.
Well, it's longer.
Any other questions on the buildings? Engineer?
As a matter of you
Doug?
would certainly be able, if you wanted to change modify the colors of the horizontal beams, if you will, the long pieces, so that you would get the visual differentiation even if the surface stays the same. Is that so?
Correct. We could also look at, for instance, let's just jump back to that. It's probably emphasized a bit because we've made it a stripe. So what we could also do is we could bring down in front of the columns, we could bring down whatever that is, more of a masonry look, so it felt a little bit more building-like. That would ground it a bit more so it doesn't float and seem like such a bar. So then it would feel more like a one-story building instead of a parking structure. That might help as another possibility because then it doesn't have that floating garage quality. We need to maintain, unfortunately, the code requirements, the building requirements for ventilation for the garage really demand that we keep wide slots as much as we can. We're able to achieve that for the other structure by putting quite a few verticals on it, but I think that's going to feel too busy for this, so I think the more modest and quiet we can make this, the better. the happier everyone will be. So I think we can do more to that facade to make it feel a little more building-like and de-emphasize that horizontality.
I'm sorry, were you done? The understory of rhododendron, I'm trying to picture it. It's fairly close to the road.
Right now, it is fairly close to
Right.
the road in this section, but if you go further west toward Paul Road, right at the corner where the Paul Road entrance is, it's actually covers almost the whole understory underneath the trees. It's quite spectacular. So the intent is to bring as much of that through the rest of the slope as we can.
Well, that was going to be my point, is that echoing what Ed referenced it before, the elevation, this thing is, what did you say, 26, 28 feet up? My concern is that, and echoing Julia's comment about the 800 feet, my concern is that I appreciate the intention to put in the rhododendron, but my recollection of that understory is that it's very close to the road, and this building is going to be higher up on the hill. I'm concerned we're going to kind of see right over the rhododendron and just see this long strip, and I don't know if there's a way to plant closer to the actual structure, and maybe that's your intention over time, to mask it.
I think the intent is to do both, because from the folks that are driving by on the road, obviously if you're driving westbound, your chance of seeing it will be fairly low because the plantings will be fairly high pretty quickly, and plus you should be looking at the road. When you're driving eastbound, you'll probably see it a little bit more, right? You're a little further away from that slope. So the intent is for us to plant that slope and then to put some heavier plantings up closer to the building. Now, one of the things for us to define what we've shown currently there in our planting plan, there is a requirement from the township to build literally almost a blind in terms of evergreens. That's very prescriptive about what conceals a parking structure from a public way. So one question that we would need to study, and we'll look through, and we showed it right now at the road edge. It may not be the best solution. The best solution may be to put it up at the structure, which would allow us to have the rhododendrons be the foreground, and you put it up closer to the building where it does the most to disguise it the most quickly, and let the rhododendrons, which is a more attractive landscape. Everyone understands, I think, to some extent, that the blind for a parking garage is not particularly attractive compared to an understory of rhododendron. So while we're showing it at the base now, maybe that's something we move up further up the hill so that we're accomplishing both of those things.
Any other questions? Skip?
One last question. The top of the structure, the upper deck, is there any ability to put any plantings in there at all? I mean, especially near the edge where the upper edge, I guess, more towards campus?
I would, just for clarity, you're assuming this edge across the front edge?
No, the opposite edge.
The opposite edge.
Yep.
What we have right now is there is a 6-foot planted buffer between the edge of the parking and the roadway. And this essentially, from that side, will look like a parking lot because it's on grade. So we will plant that edge. We'll keep it somewhat open so that folks understand that there's parking there, but we're going to screen it as much as possible since nobody likes to look at a parking lot.
But it butts up against the edge of the earth, and then almost all the structure is structure. It's not set at all on earth.
The upper level is not set on earth at all. That's correct. Okay. And you'll see, just for understanding, you'll see that there's that little bridge piece here where we don't have any spots that I mentioned earlier. There is a ramp right here that goes down and a stair so that you can come down to the lower level at that spot. So there, the strip is a little narrower, but for the most part, we have a full strip on both sides.
Okay. We'll move to section 3 or number 3?
Number 4.
Number 4.
And then at some point, we're going to just do the general engineer comments.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And this is kind of lead into that. So the last comment was traffic, of working out traffic. There were some disagreements, and I see Amy's here tonight. We actually concurred with the Township Engineer's review letter, where he said that we were in discussions with the Township. We've had discussions. There's open dialogue about the improvements to Eagle and King of Prussia, with Eastern, with PennDOT, with the Township. as with Eastern's application, the improvements to King of Prussia and Eagle are almost separate from this project. As Amy pointed out in her previous letter, that this project does not impact traffic. There is no change in traffic due to this project. But one of the comments in the previous letter that we disagreed with, and what we were asking for is to continue to study that, our driveway on King of Prussia Road, was that it was recommending that we have right-in, right-out only. From a practical matter, right-in, right-out doesn't work there. Just, somebody coming from the south, coming up King of Prussia Road, isn't going to drive all the way up to Upper Gulf Road to come into the site. An alternative to right-in, right-out that we've actually discussed with PennDOT informally, and they are in acceptance of this. Obviously they have to see plans and details and everything else, but the concept of it would be to actually change and add a left turn lane into our campus. So this is our King of Prussia Road driveway. This is King of Prussia Road going top to bottom. Right to left is Eagle that goes to Pine Tree. The only comment that PennDOT had was when we take a look at that is they had a left turn lane onto Pine Tree. There's very minimal use to that left turn, but they asked us that we put a minimal left turn onto Pine Tree, which we would just have to change this gore pattern to accommodate that. PennDOT looked at it and thought that it would be able to accommodate it. So there were other alternatives rather than just a definitive yes or no answer. So all that we ask is that we continue to study that. We're going to continue to work with the township and work through that process. The whole Eagle King of Prussia Road intersection is really a separate conversation from the rest of the project.
Questions? Comments?
Now, you don't see any impact on traffic at all because of this thing? We're not going to be increasing enough?
We're not changing any populations. The only reason we're adding parking is to meet code. We're not changing the percentage of the parking. I know in our previous application there was a concern. The major concern was that we were focusing 711 out of 1,000 plus parking spaces on the south side of campus with a new driveway. And so the concern was that we were going to change all the traffic patterns everywhere of everyone coming to Cabrini. And so by not changing the percentages, and I think we've shown you this in previous presentations, is we're really keeping the percentage of parking in the same locations, generally, a north location and a south location, and those percentages are going to remain the same.
In this diagram, I have a couple questions about it.
Sure.
The area of King of Prussia Road north of Eagle, that whole general area. There has been talk of widening the road south of King of Prussia as part of the Eastern project. Is the conversation with PennDOT, with you, with Eastern, in widening the northern part of King of Prussia Road?
The actual plan, and Amy probably knows more about it than I do, but the plan that Eastern has presented actually widens on both the north and the south. In order to mirror image, if you're going to create the northbound left turn lane onto Eagle, you have to widen north of Eagle to be able to have the proper flares. This plan actually shows this plan is basically just a restriping of the proposed plan. So this doesn't require any further widening. There might be one small location, I think right here, of about 20 feet or so that gets widened by a foot, but it didn't require any more widening than the existing plan.
So in this drawing, the red striping that's north of your driveway, is that part of your proposal, or is that in conjunction with the Eastern? What does that striping represent north of your entrance?
Where we show it in red, it was the redoing the striping. The previous the current Eastern plan included striping up into that area. Yes.
Okay. And in this drawing, in this rendition, how many cars could be stacked in your left-hand turn into the entrance into Cabrini?
I'm going to say it was and this is off the top of my head, a 75-foot queue lane. So it's 4 cars roughly.
Okay.
And again, that's where we've asked to really go back and study all those things. It's ultimately going to be up to PennDOT, so
right.
We're going to have to work through that with PennDOT.
Okay, thank you.
Question, what percentage how many people do you have driving in and out of the campus on a daily basis?
I can go back to those slides to tell you the exact numbers. I do not know the exact number.
Okay, what percentage come on the Eagle Road entrance versus the one on Upper Gulf?
Interestingly, it was almost a 50-50 is my recollection. It was, some people come, if you're coming north, if you're traveling southbound on King of Prussia Road, you're going to make the right onto Upper Gulf, then left into campus. And the people coming south obviously want to come into the south point of campus. So it was kind of an interesting mix when we looked at all the different traffic counts. I could, open them all back up again. I didn't focus on those numbers tonight.
So if they're coming up the Blue Route to get to school, they're going to come in the south?
They're going to come in the south side. And no matter what we sign that, signing it right in, right out is just going to encourage, I think, illegal turns.
What, from teenagers? Gee.
If I can interject, I have had discussion with PennDOT about this access, and I don't believe that you were the one that spoke with PennDOT. I believe
no,
it was
Frank Tavani, our
that
traffic
went down there.
engineer. Correct.
And then PennDOT sent a follow-up letter to us, and you are aware that there will be the need for traffic study, that you're not just going to design the plans and have it go as you're showing here. And the other thing that I do want to point out is this is the first time that I've seen this particular sheet showing what you're considering for it. I guess I would disagree that on the northbound, where you were, the Planning Commission was asking the question about north of the site, whether or not there would be widening. I believe it's probably going to be more extensive than what you're considering right now. I know you will be required to have a highway occupancy permit. You're going to be required to update and modify the signal permit plan. The turn lane for Pine Tree is going to need to be minimally 75 feet, and it looks like you're probably showing 15 or 20. I'm just guessing by what I'm seeing
This doesn't
here.
even show one, but yeah.
Okay. And I don't believe that the right in, right out has been disregarded by PennDOT, and we were not talking about just doing signage and leaving the pavement markings to enforce that. That was meant to be a curb-mountable pork chop island to not allow those movements to occur. I don't think that it's as definitive as you tend to think it is, but I will say that there have been discussions and that they're ongoing on it.
Right, and that's our understanding, is we've opened up the dialogue.
Well,
Hang on. Amy, isn't it true that PICO is going to make, PennDOT, is going to make a lot of these decisions, and that as a planning commission, we'd like to know what people might be thinking and where the traffic is going to be leaving the site. But we don't need to hash out these little details, right? Because this is really beyond our control.
It's not necessarily. If there's an opinion for the township, PennDOT does weigh in on that because it
Okay.
is an access within your municipality. And if you make an argument, and it's a strong enough argument, then they will consider and look at that. I know that they weren't aware that the access off Eagle Road had been eliminated prior to Frank talking to about, and that was the whole reason for the whole traffic study, was because the access or the King of Prussia and Eagle Road intersection was designed with the intent that a lot of your trips would be eliminated at that King of Prussia access and rerouted to the Paul Road access or the Eagle Road access. And now with you eliminating that access, it was open for discussion. So I just wanted to clarify why that discussion occurred with PennDOT.
One other question is, you don't foresee, let me put it in the form of a question, do you foresee any expansion in night training or night classes and so forth that are going to create a, if you will, a second tier or a second wave of traffic in and out?
I'll defer to Howard for the official answer, but there are no plans to really change the program.
No, I do know that that's one of our concerns about the small university across the street.
Okay. Let's go over to the actual engineering comments. Now, do we have any questions on those, or do we want to go to the engineer first? Anybody have specific questions, or you want to go to Mike? Mike, you want to just review those and let us know what you have as major open items still on your comments?
All right. One of the comments that we had was regarding the steep slopes and just confirmation of whether they were man-made existing steep slopes. I know some of the slopes have been confirmed from building permits from before along where the south garage was. And there were some areas to the north that we hadn't seen plans yet, that had been delineated on your plans as being man-made steep slopes. So we needed confirmation on those.
We can
with the
provide all those
plan.
plans. We have, we've culled plans from the township over 25 years. That
Yeah, I'm sure
pretty much
they
all the
have.
areas that we're touching are previously developed.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's just, based on the previous rules that we had set up that, we need to see the physical plan. We had the plan from the south garage where that driveway was put in, so we just needed to see those plans.
We can provide this.
Other comments?
Did you have a question?
No, just continue.
I just want confirmation real quick before I forget the thought of it, that the distinction between looking, you made mention that the majority of your work is over previously disturbed areas and you have previous plans, but the distinction of having grading permits for those areas is different from just simply having plans. So if I could just...
The plans that I'm referring to are permit plans that are stamped and numbered by the township.
With grading permits,
Yes.
is my point.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's all I just wanted to clarify, that it should include that.
Well, if we're not going item by item, unless you're about to.
It's up to you guys, however, if there's specific
Well,
ones that you want to go over.
In a
Can we
perfect
go over
world,
the sidewalk comment?
yeah.
Bottom of page 6.
And also the Tridifferent comment, too.
Oh, thank you. Sorry, I interrupted you.
I'm happy to hit
Is
both
that
of
on
those if you
skip?
like.
The Tridifferent comment?
I can solve the Tridifferent one real quick.
Go ahead.
I met with Matt Bauman that Tridifferent does not need to review this. I have an email from him that I can provide to your staff.
Okay.
Do we trust Matt? Oh, no.
Who?
And
But I noticed that the engineer had a comment about the sidewalk shall be required. And that hadn't come up before, and I was wondering.
Well, that's really something for the Board of Commissioners. That's really for the commissioners, according to your ordinance, that would be their determination.
Well, yeah, but we make recommendations on everything. That had never come up before. And I'm
No, it
wondering-
hasn't.
I
And
wanted to
after
ask the-
18 months, I was shocked to see that myself. I can't imagine they want us cutting
Okay, I
down
need
trees
to
on
ask
Eagle
my
Road.
engineer what his thinking is
Yeah,
there.
Okay.
I believe this comment came about from a township meeting. And, I believe that's, they're technically required, so I guess a waiver would be required.
actually, they're not required. It's up to the it's up to the discretion of the board. So they're not really a required item if you read the ordinance.
Are we suggesting by item number 9 that they put sidewalks all the way down King of Prussia Road and along
looks like-
Eagle? And
That's what the letters requested.
That's why we were surprised to see that.
I'm surprised too.
Maybe you could put them in somewhere else in the township we need them. No, I do have an engineering comment, though. On the plans on sheet 3, it makes mention of the riparian buffer being required to be 35 feet, but it's existing at 25 and proposed to stay at 25. And I'm just trying to clarify where exactly in this plan you have an existing riparian buffer of 25 feet and you're proposing to maintain that 25 feet. I'm reading it on page 3.
Just sticking with this existing plan, there's a stream or creek that runs along the western property over here, and this driveway is within 25 feet of that.
So it's
an
not
existing
actual
dri-
construction you're doing, it's just existing conditions?
It's just an existing condition.
Thank you. Okay. Appreciate that.
So is there any other comments here that you disagree with it in the engineering letter at this point in time,
I didn't see anything that was,
except for the sidewalks?
the sidewalks, but really that was a board question, so I wasn't even too concerned about that one. And I think everything else, I did not see any problem with
What do we
anything
have
else.
now for sidewalks, either on Eagle Road or King of Prussia? Do we have any at all?
None.
None on either side?
Not only that, how far is that steel vertical fence away from the edge of the road? You wouldn't be able to fit a sidewalk. Would you be able to fit a sidewalk in between the road and?
We'd probably have to remove the fence. There would be a lot of grading. If you asked us to put a sidewalk along Eagle Road, we'd probably disturb a 50 to 75-foot wide swath by the time we're all said and done, cutting down trees, regrading, putting in curbs, a tree lawn, a side. It would look like Lancaster Avenue all of a sudden, and I'm not sure the neighbors.
A pedestrian connection between the two colleges, isn't there?
There is a pedestrian.
How do the
connection.
kids get back and forth?
There is a pedestrian connection. Kids really don't go back and forth between the two schools, interestingly enough. And that was used much more for camps during the summer and things like that. And it's not really utilized for that purpose.
The smokers go back and forth. No, one campus is non-smoking and the other is smoking, is my understanding.
Yeah, they sit in the right of way there, and I've seen that happen.
As I recall,
So stay with that. How would they do that then? In the new plan, they're coming down Paul Road?
We're eliminating that. The previous plan and this plan both eliminate that
Altogether?
connection altogether.
Okay.
There's shuttles and things if students want to go back and forth.
But if somebody wanted to walk between the two campuses, how would they do it?
We don't propose that they do.
My recollection is that there's striping on King of Prussia Road, on Eagle Road.
There is. There is.
All there is
and there's
painting on the road.
There's some painting on the road. There's a wood chip type path with some railroad ties that are existing there. After the smokers, that is not well utilized.
So we're not eliminating something which then
We're not
creates an
changing
unsafe
it.
condition.
Right. We're not changing.
Okay.
Not changing.
Okay.
as I recall, I mean, if I remember correctly, it was like 3, 4, 5 years ago, there were a lot of things which were interactive between the two campuses, and they've done away with that. And I forget who it was, somebody said that they actually would like to close it off if they could, but they're not going to. It's just going to let it sort of fall into disuse. Is that the...
I think during our previous application, we talked about basically, decommissioning it.
I do recall that we had conversations that you were going to be eliminating that crossing there. That's a mid-block crossing there. It's not ADA compliant. And my understanding was during our conversations and meetings that we had was that you and Eastern were interested, both campuses were interested in vacating that. Is that correct?
Yeah, we were
That's
not,
my recollection.
Yeah, we were not proposing to use it.
I think the Planning Commission is interested in hearing that. So,
If you want us to remove the paint, we'll arrange to remove the paint, but
well,
that's...
I think if you're going to vacate that crossing, you should eliminate the pavement markings that are out there for it. That would just be my opinion.
No, I agree. I appreciate that. Where are Delaware County Planning Commission's comments?
I didn't bring them with me tonight. We received them.
Did we have them?
Yeah,
Okay.
they've been received for a while.
All right. We haven't seen them. No, so we would like to see those.
Like, have you seen those? Or,
Yeah, I think you've...
well, not on this
I don't know
one.
what you received.
Not on this
Right.
plan.
I think there's some reference in here that they acknowledged receipt of the request for comments on November 19th, but we hadn't seen anything back from them. So is it post November 19th?
Yes, the Planning Commission comments, and I want to say we received them in either late September or early October.
No, that's pre. I meant, I thought I saw something
I don't think
here
you
about the
resubmit
new
the plans.
plan. Okay.
We don't resubmit the plan. The plan didn't really change from their perspective, so it really doesn't.
It was submitted to Delaware County after the second parking garage was added. I think
Correct.
that's what we're trying to clarify. I think that's
a
what Skip's
September
trying to
1st
clarify.
submission,
Okay,
or August
thank you.
31st submission, and I think you received those comments. I want to say it was late September or early October, something like that.
Sorry, I don't mean to change the subject. Are you still requesting a waiver for the parallel park, what is it? Yeah, the angled parking, or has that been?
No,
taken care of?
we show the angled parking now. There was a question about the way you do the measurement. It's a foot. We've got plenty of space.
So you're fine
We'll
with
add
that?
the foot. Not a problem.
So there's no waivers required at this point? That was
Correct.
eliminated. Okay. We like that. Any other general questions for staff or the applicant? Public comment? Any public comment? Sir?
I keep coming back again, I'm sorry. Chip white, not the color, the island, W-I-G-H-T, unlike it's printed in the notes from last time. I guess I should explain how I'm a local. In 1948, I left the hospital and went to 220 South Wayne Avenue, after which I went to, in 1950, to the corner of King of Prussia Road and Pine Tree Road, and I've been involved in taking care of that property ever since. And now I'm executive of the state. And what I'm asking the board to do is, as things have developed, not to impose on the residential properties, which is what they're going to ask for traffic lights and things like that. They have a problem, a major problem, which keeps being downplayed in terms of traffic. They've decided not to go with Eagle Road, which would make more sense, but the problem of getting into Cabrini College is a major one. And I'm here to offer all the board members an invitation to come to 607 King of Prussia Road. Nobody's living there. Drive up the driveway, turn around, and park your car halfway down. Do not bring a civil engineer or a traffic engineer. Bring common sense, because it is apparent, just watching what's happening, that major problems need to be addressed here. The other thing is, as I said before, those entrances and exits to the property are the same as when I grew up. Mrs. Darnes had those. They did pave the road to the barn off Upper Gulf, but other than that, they're the same ones. And things have grown, and things have changed. It's just like King of Prussia Road used to go to King of Prussia when I was a kid. The expressway cut it off. And things change, and you have to change with as things increase. Villanova is not a little tiny college anymore. It's absconded with hundreds of acres of friends' houses. And so I think this is a problem that really needs to be addressed before they add more cars.
So your primary concern would be that traffic improvements are needed, but that they shouldn't impose on the residents across the street in making those improvements?
You speak very well, and
Okay.
I made myself
Make sure I
clear.
got it.
Okay, that's it. The other last thing I wanted to just bring up is, if you take Eagle Road from King of Prussia to Radnor Chester Road, how many residents are on that road? I count one private driveway on Eagle Road from King of Prussia to Radnor Chester, or Radnor Street Road, thank you. It's all higher academics. And should we change the name to another College Avenue? But that's
So are you
where
on the
the
corner-
traffic should be located, on Eagle Road, because it's
You're on the corner, though, of Eagle and Pine, right?
Yes.
Have you ever considered taking access off of Pine?
Yes.
Because Eagle's, it's going to get bigger, not smaller.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
I don't know if that's a possibility, but...
Actually, we've gotten tax things for 101 Pine Tree Road as well as 607 King of Prussia Road. So, yes, there's plenty of room to put a driveway.
Because you might want to ask PennDOT to consider making that part of the overall plan if they do need to make improvements to that road. Get your voice in early and say, hey, if you're making all these changes, can you consider relocating my driveway? I don't know if they do that, but you might want to bring it up early.
I've asked to, because, as I mentioned before, the height of King of Prussia Road is up 18 inches up from when I was a child. And now all the water runs onto my property and not that's been created from runoff. I said to the eastern people who want to do an intersection change, how about putting a curb in on, oh no, we don't do that.
Finish that. A curb where? Explain it.
Along my property.
Along your side.
So that keeps the water that runs down King of Prussia Road like a torrent in a heavy rainstorm off the property. and also keeps the people trying to get around the northbound cars trying to turn into Cabrini off my lawn, who try to get around those cars to get down the road. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Other public comment? I don't see any others. Any further discussion or questions? I guess I have one question. The traffic study then, Amy, would happen at what point? Do we need that traffic study before we can go further with this preliminary plan, or can that be after this plan?
Is this preliminary that
This
they're
is-
going for this evening?
Yes, right? Peter, help me out. This is preliminary.
Yes.
Yes.
I don't think it would be a problem, but I believe that your CELDO may require it to be submitted with the preliminary. Is that correct?
The traffic study that you're referring to is really a group traffic study. It's going to be, both Eastern, it's not us starting a traffic study from scratch. We're going to be looking at the Eastern traffic study, working with PennDOT, going back and forth. And that's where I was saying, like, the intersection, similar to Eastern's project, the intersection is really a separate project in and of itself. Our project does not add any traffic. It does not change our access points. We've been, worked through the township here to get this all approved. So it's really just that intersection. We've agreed that we were going to continue to work with the township. And so really the traffic study that you're referring to is a separate project.
I don't agree with that. Your CELDO specifically requires institutional land development to submit a traffic impact study.
And we submitted one. And
Which was based on your trips being rediverted to Eagle Road for the access off Eagle Road.
No, we submitted one with this application that was, it was curtailed. I'll admit that it was curtailed. But basically it shows that we have no traffic impact. We're not changing traffic. So we can do all the counts, we can show everything, and we have zero change in our existing traffic.
I don't think that the issue is a matter of whether or not you're increasing your traffic. What we're concerned about is making sure that the traffic is already existing out there is not disrupting vehicular movements on King of Prussia Drive or Road.
I just have a question as it relates to this. In a vacuum, I guess that's our SALDO requirement. In light of the fact that this has to be done in coordination with Eastern, does it, and it's a protracted process because of the other party involved, I guess I would lean toward, all the other issues aside, if they're acceptable, granting a preliminary, giving them time to do this since it's more of a protracted issue. My question to you is that really egregious, or is that something we should shy away from, or what are the dangers of doing something like that?
I don't think it's a problem. I think the fact that PennDOT has already weighed in on the discussion and is requiring the traffic impact study, my initial impression when we requested the traffic impact study was that they were not going to do it, period. And now that PennDOT has weighed in and indicated that there will be a study, I think that satisfies me as far as knowing that there will be a traffic study coming, and we'll have an opportunity to comment on that and make sure that the accesses are operating adequately.
Is there any chance that PennDOT or this study could weigh in on the effect of the Eagle Road entrance then? Or they would just be, as the applicant's saying, focused on the intersection in King of Prussia Road?
We can, I had made some direction on what I thought would be important things to look at and consider. And I'm just not sure where the township would like to go with that. So we're still discussing a scope of work. PennDOT may not require them to do the Eagle Road access study. The other is the Upper Gulf access, which I know is in Tredyffrin. But right now, I think we're more focused on the King of Prussia access. And given the gentleman's concerns that came forward earlier, I'm not sure where he's sitting right now. I have heard that you've been speaking to the township about that, and they've been sharing your concerns with me. So I made some notes this evening to make sure that there is some consideration given to that. Okay.
I'd just like to remind everybody, at one of the first meetings, that there was more traffic to go onto Eagle Road, and there was an inordinate amount of people at the township that showed up that were vehemently against that, were very concerned about safety, about traffic, about congestion. So I'm not saying they're right or wrong, but that was a real hot spot with the residents.
I understand that. And I think part of that issue was also having the garage and the volume coming in off that site. That was a big concern.
Can you foresee circumstances under which PennDOT or a traffic study would reverse or revise the decision that we've already seemed to have made to not go off Eagle Road?
No, it would not reverse that.
So the preliminary plan as we see...
That's off the table now.
Okay, so the preliminary plan, I mean, we may change the entrance off of King of Prussia Road a little bit, but it's going to still be there.
And it's not unusual to have a project come in and have some tweaking to the driveway accesses as you get more into the engineering and further discussions and hearing from residents. It's not unusual to have those accesses revised as you go along.
But my point was going to be that you have one entrance in on King of Prussia, one entrance in on Upper Gulf, and ostensibly the one going out at Pole Road, and that isn't going to change.
Correct. My understanding is that the Paul Road access, I know it's not directly aligned with Paul Road, but that seems to be the easiest way to discuss it, is that those improvements would be to consider the emergency services and make sure that they have the adequate entrance and exit onto Eagle, and that would continue to be a right-in, right-out.
A couple of things. One, for me, it's occurring a little bit of a chicken and an egg, and maybe this makes all the more sense to have it be the traffic study, is that I could foresee a situation where a traffic study modeling a right-in, right-out will have a completely different impact on the college in terms of who's likely to use the southern parking garage if access is only from the north. You know, and that could impact this project internally for them. Because
Susan, aren't the dorms?
They are, but Steve, if you can only get into the southern garage if you're coming from the north, coming south on King of Prussia Road.
But like, I don't know a percentage, but not all the parking is there. So if you're living there, I mean, wouldn't you want to park next to your home?
You would, but you'd have to go. Think about how you'd have to go all the way up and around to be able to come down. I'm just saying. I don't know all I'm saying is that I could see it may make the case that, for even more reasons, we need a traffic impact study to see the modeling of, well, what happens to the traffic with a right-in, right-out, and what happens to traffic without right-in, right-out, because I think right-in, right-out will have such a dramatic impact on who uses and how the southern part of the campus is used. Now, that's not my problem. Don't get me wrong. I think the applicant should, do the traffic. It's a failing intersection, and any information we can get about that intersection from Cabrini, from Eastern, from PennDOT, that's going to help township residents is important to have, whatever that information is that's revealed, because that is, I don't live in that part of town, but I can really appreciate the people who live up there, how dramatically
we're going to get the traffic study done, though.
Right.
So,
I'm just saying that it'll be interesting. Normally, from that, they would make a recommendation, yep, they should have a right-in, right-out. My point is that the traffic study might have to be thinking about what would it look like right-in, right-out versus what would it look like without right-in, right-out. That's my only point about that.
That's
Amy, is it likely
correct.
that we'll have the traffic study before this comes back for final?
Oh, definitely.
Okay.
The reason that we were asking for the study is because I'm concerned about the back-to-back lefts, the lefts for Pine Tree versus the lefts for Cabrini. I know there's 80 vehicles making that left in to Cabrini during the peak hour in the morning. And we didn't really analyze that in that first study that was submitted. And I know that it wasn't submitted because I looked at it to make sure. I don't like to make comments unless I...
I've agreed with you. Our original plan was to build a 711-car parking structure with an access off of Eagle Road. We had 120 neighbors, or the audience was full of neighbors that did not want the Eagle Road access. We had meetings at Cabrini where neighbors actually came up and said, if you eliminate the Eagle Road access, we won't oppose the 711-car parking structure. It wasn't the parking structure necessarily, it was the access to Eagle Road. We've now redesigned the plan. We're not changing any of our traffic patterns. It's my understanding, if we're not changing any traffic, any volumes, any use of a driveway, we have an existing HOP for that driveway, highway occupancy permit. PennDOT can't revoke our HOP because we're not changing it. So there's really no requirement from PennDOT that we go back and restudy that. What we have agreed to do is go participate with Eastern, that Eastern has proposed a intersection improvement that did not take into account the fact that we will leave that driveway as is. Because of the neighbor reaction and township reaction, we decided to leave our driveway access points as is. We have now agreed that we will work with Eastern to go restudy that access, review what they're currently proposing for that, and make sure that our existing driveway, the way it stands, that their study takes that into account, that we're not changing our driveway because of their project.
Getting back to my other comment about the engineer's comments, just looking at 25536, that curbing shall be provided along streets when required by the township, it seems a shame to me. And I kind of wasn't kidding about the sidewalks. To me, it would be crazy to have you guys put in sidewalks along King of Prussia Road and Eagle Road. It doesn't seem crazy, but it seems a shame to me that we couldn't kind of use that, not that money, but that get the sidewalks somewhere we could put them to use. And I'm thinking the same thing about the curbing. If there's curbing or not curbing along Eagle Road, it feels like somebody ought to be helping out Mr. Wright and putting in some curbing, whether it's PennDOT, whether it's Eastern, whether it's Cabrini, whether all three of them kick in together. I don't know, but maybe it's just me. It feels like somebody ought to be helping out a neighbor who has clearly been impacted by the kind of growth that's happened on that corner when all they did was own their house and live their life. And they're getting flooding and, in their front yard and traffic up the wall, whatever. We do have a requirement of curbing. And it doesn't actually say, I guess I'm presuming it's supposed to be on the applicant's property, but it doesn't actually say it like that. Pardon?
You could do a fee in lieu in some municipalities.
Exactly. That's right. That's kind of what I'm thinking. Something to help. I would hope applicants, Eastern, they're doing their thing, Cabrini's doing theirs, PennDOT's coming in, somebody would help out a neighbor who's, really being impacted.
Well, I do want to point out that I believe that there have been discussions because there's an easement that's needed on your corner. Am I correct? And one of the things that you requested was that curbing along your frontage. And and I don't know where that conversation ended or what has occurred. That was just something that was reported back to me.
I was turned down for the curbing.
Okay. I'm on.
Sir, if you could
Sir,
use
you can
the
come up
microphone.
front. Why don't you come forward so everybody can hear you? Thank you.
I'm sorry. Yes, the engineers, Nick, who was the engineer for Eastern, came to me and they want 350 square feet from at the corner of Pine Tree Road and King of Prussia Road from my property for a traffic light. And I said, well, in the quid pro quo of life, how about curbing my King of Prussia Road? And he said, no. He said, maybe we could put in some big stones to keep people from driving on your lawn.
Well, did you turn him down? Did you say no?
Oh, yes.
All right, so he's still, all right.
So it's still an open discussion.
All right.
But
Okay.
no, nobody wants to do anything for my property. And when I was growing up, there were no traffic lights at the corner of King of Prussia and Pine Tree Roads. Right. And so we all of a sudden got all that. And, so things have changed, but why take it from the private person? The people who create the problem should pay for the problem.
But we agree, and we'll do what we can to help you.
Can I ask a question, sir? You said that water comes running down King of Prussia Road and ends up on your property?
Yes.
There's a big difference in elevation, is that correct?
Yes. If you would like, I can show you the original curbstones on King of Prussia Road, because the water has washed away the bank and exposed them, and they're 18 inches below the surface of the road.
Well, I happen to be an engineer and electrical, but I understand this. Just putting up curbs is.
I think we're off topic.
It's not seem to be the solution. They might have to do more than just put curbs up.
I think
that might be the reason that they did what they did.
I think Sue's point is well taken. We can make that
All right.
comment.
We'll work on
The curb is probably from 1850 that was original.
Okay. Any other public comment?
I had one.
Not seeing none. Any final comment from the board?
Well, this isn't a final comment. This relates to the King of Prussia Road access. Would a possible unintended consequence of a right-in, right-out suddenly have a lot of people using Eagle Road for the right-in to get to the southern garage?
That's what the traffic study is going to show us.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, that's where the township, has to, we can be eager to have a right-in, right-out on King of Prussia, but the neighbors have certainly spoken before this that they would not want to see a surge in traffic on Eagle.
Okay. Any final comment then?
Yeah, going back to the engineer's letter, I might have missed this, but what was the applicant's response to the outstanding comments? Are they all will comply? Are there comments you're not willing to comply with?
Everything but the sidewalks.
Right.
Yeah, and those were up to
Let
the
them-
board. All the comments, there's, I did not see any problem with any of the comments that they had. There obviously, some of the comments were to work with the Director of Public Works and things like that. So,
Right.
We're going to work with the Director of Public Works. There's really no yes or no answer to that, but, we're going to continue to work with the township and staff and consultants to move the project forward.
And regarding the sidewalks and the curbing, if the township does require them, you're going to ask for a waiver?
If the township asks, we will discuss it with the board and ask for the waiver or install sidewalks.
But curbing as well. 255-36 is very clear. It's
Right,
not.
I understand.
Yeah, okay.
I had one stray comment also. Page 13, number 9, we strongly recommend that wherever possible, all proposed stormwater management facilities be placed under proposed parking lots.
We discussed that before. Their intent is that, or I believe their intent is that we're not going to try not to go outside of either paved areas or rain gardens or things like that. And as we discussed last time, getting into final, we want to do all those things. We want to take a look at putting in more rain gardens, potentially porous asphalt, different things to really consolidate our footprints.
Last chance. Any other comment?
Well, I just
Ma'am?
tried. Oh.
Did you have another comment?
Well, I just want to clarify something that. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, the Bob
No,
was talking about.
I didn't catch your name.
Rob Lambert?
Rob, thank you. I'm sorry, Rob. If I understand you correctly, you're not technically going to submit a waiver for sidewalks to us and ask us to give a recommendation one way or the other about a waiver for sidewalks. Rather, you're just going to take that up with the Board of Commissioners? Is that?
Because I believe the ordinance section said the Board of Commissioners. Or
If the Planning Commission were to feel strongly about the sidewalks and the curbs, that would be part of your recommendation
Right.
to the commissioners to either include that or not as you saw fit.
Typically, applicants, when they ask for a waiver from sidewalks, make that request of us as well, and then we make a recommendation. But I think
it
that
hasn't
your
been asked
intent.
of us. That's why we're not asking for a waiver. It's 18 months into the project, and we just, it's in the township engineer's letter.
I'm sorry, I think we just got a preliminary plan like a month and a half ago. You guys mentioned 18 months.
For working through this process, this is a new.
Working through the process and submitting a preliminary plan are two very different things.
They are. You're correct.
But
But I think it's in the engineer's letter, so if we agree with that, then he has to ask for a waiver.
That's my point. Thank you. That's
I
was
think
the point I
that's
was trying to
clear.
make.
So we're going to make a motion tonight, somebody can make the motion with or without that in, and then we can go from there. And they would have to ask for the waiver.
Correct.
You're going to make a comment?
I was going to ask you to rule on the plan.
Thank you. Any other comment? Staff? Do I have a motion on this?
I'd like to make a motion.
Go right ahead.
I'm going to try to make this motion. Okay, I move that we recommend preliminary approval of the plan, provided that the applicant agrees to work with PennDOT and the township as necessary on an area traffic study, And we further recommend that traffic improvements to Eagle Road do not impose on residential properties across the street. And I would, in my motion, I would recommend that we not require sidewalks on any of the roads surrounding the property.
I would second that.
I would not require sidewalks or
So
curbs.
not sidewalks or curbs.
I mean, I don't want to add to the motion, but as an aside, I agree with Susan's point that we need to help the neighbors out, but I think we just need to say we need to help the neighbors out. I
That's
don't think
okay.
we specifically should use the curbs and the sidewalks for that.
Okay.
So, Jewel, just a clarification regarding the neighbors or building on what Susan added. Are you saying you don't want curbs and sidewalks there, but would like to see a fee in lieu of or work in lieu of the sidewalks being placed on this property?
Yes.
I have a question about where the property is exactly. I keep thinking it's across from Eastern as opposed across from...
Or which property? I mean, in general, I think.
Mr. White's.
It's just about where the green dot is, so it's
Yeah.
it's the northeast
It's the
corner.
northeast corner.
Okay.
Yes, northeast. It's the northeast corner of King of Prussia and Pine Tree. And it's for sale right now, correct? So we have a motion on the table. Skip, do I still have your second? I have a second from Skip. Any questions, comments, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Take a second, let them clear the room.
No, Ed, why
Yes, ma'am.
Why did we not see sketch plan? Because we do sketch plans last?
Yes.
Okay.
We'll do that now.
Okay.
Yes.
Hi. Did you not want to talk? Oh.
We are now going to look at sketch plan for 560 Sprawl Road, SD 2012 D07, Academy of Notre Dame. Development of track, softball, and soccer fields. New auxiliary gym. New maintenance building in additions to existing performing arts buildings, modifications to the access drive and circulation roadways, and new entrance drive submitted 11/2/12. The applicant is present. And we will give the floor to you for your presentation. Thank you.
Good evening. I am Veronica Harrington, and I have the pleasure of serving as the president at the Academy of Notre Dame. And we come before you this evening to obtain the township's approval for our campus design. We were before the Township Planning Commission last July, as you may probably well remember, after having hosted our neighbors and reviewing with them Notre Dame's original site plan and vision for the school. And with your feedback from that July meeting, we moved forward, we updated the plan, applied the suggestions that you had made to us as the Planning Commission, and also some of the neighbors' wishes as well. Bringing us to this evening, and in anticipation of tonight, we once again hosted our neighbors last week, and we shared with them the revised plan that you have before you right now. And obviously, that brings us to this evening to ascertain the township's approval. And with us this evening, representing Notre Dame, we have Carl Creenan, who is our from ABHA, our architect, David Fiorella from Mominy and Associates, and Maureen Aostein from Ryan and Emery, if you should have any questions for them. Thank you.
Just tell us the meeting you had with the neighbors, how many you invited, from what area, and how many were in attendance?
Sure. This past time around, we invited all of the neighbors from Larchwood and most of the neighbors from Camp Woods. They're the two roads that abut our property. And we had two meetings, one in the afternoon, one in the evening, to accommodate them. And the first time around, I would say the afternoon meeting had probably 6 to 7 represented, and in the evening there were about 5 or 6 families that were represented.
Thank you very much.
Carl Creenan will take from here.
Good evening, Carl Creenan with ABHA Architects. Just to summarize some of the modifications that were made, I assume that most are familiar with the Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. It's, the submission here is for a master plan approval. Again, it's a long-term master plan, so the school, before they moved forward with it, again, very conceptual design here, but before the school moved forward with the process here, they wanted to, go through this process to get comment from this body and from the neighbors, and so we're continuing to work towards that. I think I'll focus on the things that were modified since we last met. One of the comments was the nature of the access road along the Larchwood properties here. There was a desire to increase the buffer, the tree buffer, which has been done. The road and the running track and the ball field were all moved further away to increase that distance.
Carl, if I may.
Okay.
Maybe we can team up here.
Okay.
The plan you had seen before, we had shown the track and the soccer field. The track and the soccer field are at the same location. What we had done is shifted the access driveway away from the properties. And although it's not shown on this plan, I can have the grading plan here with us. We've actually dropped it down the hill further to act as to create a berm between the roadway and the property line to add an elevation difference between the road and the property line and to allow more room for screening. So not to step on Carl's toes here, but the fields are at the same location. It was the road was shifted away and down the grade a little bit to create more of a buffer between the two.
Thank you. My apologies for that. So the elevation of this roadway is now lower than it was riding on top of the berm. It's actually tucked into the road, which therefore will be screen traffic from those on the far side of the property.
Excuse me, can you quantify how much lower?
I have here a plan. It's not as pretty. It's in black and white, but it shows the grading that's proposed on here. If you had recalled before, we had this roadway closer to the property line, and it was riding at the top of the ridge. We've created an elevation difference between the top of the ridge and the roadway itself of about 4 to 5 feet. So what we've done, what we had before is sort of a plateau at the top where the roadway was and then sloping down to the track. We've shifted the roadway over, so we've sort of benched the grade through there. So the slope comes down, then we have the flatter area for the roadway, and then we slope more down to the track. So the elevation, we've lowered the roadway by 4 to 5 feet along that area.
And the track is lower than the track and the field are lower than the land around it, or above?
There's a transition point. It is lower than the grading, shall we say, on the west side. There's a little bit of fill down at the driveway area. So this driveway is an exit-only driveway, so as you're going down the driveway and the field being to the right, as further back into the campus, it is lower in elevation than the roadway. Midway through, partly midway through, it sort of makes a transition point where it's close to level, and then the field itself rises somewhat in order to get the flat area while the road continues down.
When you get to the next level of design, could you bring us some cross-sections?
Sure.
Thank you.
Well, what we wanted to do tonight was to present you with the master plan. A number of variances are required, and we can discuss these as we go along. But before we go into all that detailed design, we want to be sure that we can proceed with what we're doing. So the intent tonight is to get your input as we would apply for the variances that are required to initiate this plan. So yes, as we get into the plan and submit preliminary plans further into design, we'll be glad to present you with all that information.
Could you put the prettier picture back up? It's easier to read. Thank you.
Do you want to continue on since you're doing such a good job?
I don't want to step on Carl's toes. Well,
Back up, Carl.
He's got a stick.
The previous plan showed the new auxiliary gym back closer to the property, northwest of where it is now. The concern was that we required a variance for that because of the location within the setback lines. And the Planning Commission felt that it would probably better serve the campus if it was closer to the building. So we have done that. We've moved this building further over to the south within the main building envelope. No variances are required for the building. And we've reconfigured the parking area around that building. Again, the parking was a little bit reconfigured with the removal with the relocation of the building. We still have a one-way traffic pattern in from Godfrey from the intersection. We have a one-way traffic pattern through the site, and then as we get down through here, we have full circulation through the site with a one-way traffic out to Sproul Road and one-way traffic out this to Godfrey Road, the existing driveway.
Can I ask you a question about that?
Sure.
So I live near here, and there was a time when you could come into Notre Dame off of Sproul Road, the entrance that you are moving. And a few years ago, you made that a one-way out, the one that you're talking about dropping down. Did you change that in conjunction with any kind of traffic study or any kind of development work, construction work, or did you all just make that change on your own? Because from an anecdotal experience living at the bottom of Godfrey Road, which is where I live, the traffic is much worse at the corner of Godfrey and Sproul in the time since you changed the other entrance to be an exit only. And I'm just curious if you did that in conjunction with any traffic or engineering or any input or just your own internal decision to make a change to your campus.
I don't know. I don't have the answer. I know that when we did the plans for Heron and the improvements back here, they were done, I think, in 2004. I don't recall what the traffic patterns were at the time. Maybe somebody else can answer.
So, Amy, at some point, I'm going to want you to weigh in on that. Welcome to our meetings. And I am going to want you to weigh in on that because, as I said, I live literally at the bottom of Godfrey, and I've noticed the difference since they made that change, so I was curious about it.
I wasn't aware that it had changed. I made a visit to the campus and was curious about that, too, because I found it very difficult to get in and out of campus.
It's a very bad sight line exiting the campus at those gates. It's a very bad sight line because
Agreed.
of the ridge on 320, the
Agreed.
way the road is. So I was curious about that.
You're right. I'd have given you a thumbs up if I could have done it.
My name's Bill McNemich, facility manager for Notre Dame. I've been there 13 years. That's always been an exit-only road since in my time being there.
I've lived here 12, and when I first moved here, it was not.
I started there in May of 2000. It's always been an exit only, that road out. It's never been two ways. Since I've been there, there's been do not exit signs at Sproul Road and that entrance.
I don't know what to tell you.
I'm sure we can get the history. Thank you.
And
something we'll want.
That's my recollection
Yeah.
also, but I'm going to have to
Thank you.
rely on a person that has more experience than I do.
The other question just is walk me through again that road you guys are planning on putting on Godfrey, that driveway, because I don't understand it. At that access point across, right where you're, yes, that
This
thing.
one here.
How you're intending that to work, what the idea is there.
Carl, we were talking about, one of the suggestions, I believe, in previous discussions with the township was to create a second entrance, off of Godfrey Road. We had shown it here as that auxiliary entrance into the site. I think Gilmore's comments was to move that access point a little bit closer to Sproul Road, but that's something we have to take a look at. But that was the intent, is to provide a secondary access to the site off of Godfrey Road.
Why?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get. The intention is to, what's the intention there?
I'm going to have to defer to.
I think I can answer that.
Okay.
would have been last summer that we met with some of the staff here, and that was a request that I think had kind of predated our involvement. That was an idea that came from here that's saying that would, and it was my understanding that would relieve traffic at the intersection to the north by allowing turn lanes from people coming from, I guess, where you live, from the other end to not have to go through that intersection, but it was an in only. The school was okay with it, and you know, I don't think it's a huge expense and would have some relief as well, so they weren't opposed to it, but I don't think the school is married to it. Yeah, thank you.
I have a question, the bottom driveway off of Godfrey. I don't know the site as well as Susan does. Is that an in only and out only?
Out only now, and will remain that. I think that this proposal is that none of the three existing entrances change at all, ingress or egress. The only change is a new entrance here.
In only.
In only, yes.
In only.
And I suppose to your point, I don't know if the school would have a problem with making this dual way or in only. I don't know, but other than that would be across a wider road.
I think my bigger comment, if you guys are looking for feedback, is that get some input from traffic people, about what's going on in this area, and before you get too married or invested in engineered plans, is get feedback on what's the traffic doing. I mean, we all know the neighbor. I can tell the neighbor's sitting behind you. We all know how bad the traffic is there now. It's bad, and it's a small road. So let's talk about it. And interestingly, Godfrey's a state road.
Yes.
Which is crazy, and it's in very bad shape.
It's in bad shape. Yeah.
It's in dangerously bad shape when you're running it. So in any event, it needs work. That was my bigger thing, is don't do it in a bubble of just inside your property, but rather in conjunction with a traffic study.
No, certainly agree. I guess just some other highlights is what's not shown was shown on the existing plan, but there is a demolition of a building that really serves as an auxiliary gym right now, which is originally why we placed the building there, to kind of replace it in kind. So that building gets demolished, and this would replace that, albeit larger. There is a maintenance building that happens to be right here, which would prohibit the construction of the track and the parking as we have it. So that gets demolished and replaced to make this organization work as well. And then there's a couple additions on a former multi-purpose area that will allow that to become more of a theater performing arts area to do that, and that's one of the variances that comes up. David, I think we do want to also talk. One of the comments that I think that came up at the last time was trying to pin down the parking count. So I think we have better data here, but I'll leave that to David to explain that.
Before you do that, while we're on the circulation, where do the buses go? Like, if you end up with these 4 nice fields and you have 4 teams coming to play you, where do their buses go?
Well, the school buses currently will come in here, and there's a bus queuing along this road, and I think there are also some buses filter along this road as well. For games, I would assume that the buses would utilize the parking lot in this plan.
They would use the same parking lot as the cars here?
Most likely, I think, yeah. Yeah, I don't think we would. I think we would want to get them off any of these access roads, certainly, because that would inhibit traffic. And I think there's going to be the capacity, at least by this plan, to be able to park the buses close to that.
All right. So there's no design. That's not worked into the design exactly where the buses would be.
For athletic events?
Not the everyday buses. For when the fields are in use.
Yeah, maybe somebody from the academy can speak about the amount of buses that come for games. I don't think it would be excessive, but I think they would use the parking lot.
It's typically after school, so most of our students who drive are gone, and the faculty's gone. So they would either park outside the Amy Willard Gym. There's bus lanes there. They could park there, or they would just park in the parking lots that are empty until the game was over.
What in that driveway access, the I don't know what you want to call it, the one you want to move and straighten.
Shall we call it the exit driveway?
Sure. Currently, I know it's very, very common for people to park along that, just on the grass. So, yes, right, along that whole
This is the plan
thing.
of the existing driveway. The
So-
existing driveway comes in here, and yes, people do park along, parallel
I mean,
park
a
along
lot
that.
of people.
Yes,
So-
and that's one of the reasons we're providing the additional parking.
Okay, so the way it'll be designed, it will kind of prevent that? Or-
Yes.
Okay.
It'll be curved, right?
It won't be curbed, but there'll be just a shoulder, and because of the drop-off and the grading, there would be really no room for parking.
Because it's going to be cut sort of into that berm, so it'll be sloping on either side of it.
In the proposed plan, near the fields, you have that small little parking area, and then the road continues. Did you consider at all putting in maybe like a drop-off area near the fields? Because what happens is, you have all this lovely parking, but the game starts in 5 minutes, and my player needs to be on the field, just for safety, of the players and things like that. I don't know if that's an area that you could accommodate.
Are you looking at something along here?
Just
or
something
we-
closer to the 3 sports fields that, because the parking is fine, it's going to handle all what you need, but, that quick drop-off area, I see you have that parking, that's probably is that handicap parking, or?
Which area are you pointing?
You have that small little parking area,
This area here.
and then you have the drop-off in front of the mansion, but do you have any, idea about maybe having a drop-off area on the field side? Because a lot of the kids do arrive for things in cars, for the sports. It's not essential. It's just something I know that at the Radnor High School, there's a big problem with traffic backing up because kids are getting out of cars at the sports fields, and that just might make it work better for you in the long run if you have a little drop-off loop, and then you say it's no parking along there.
I think we can take a look at that.
Speaking of parking,
Yes.
I can see that you followed the code and you have your islands in the parking lot, but it's a very big parking lot.
Yes.
And I think since you're at the sketch level of design here, it would be great if you could look at putting some more green space in to break up that pavement. I know you want to fit in, you've got to fit in your spaces and it's a tight spot, but those small islands are never going to give you the look you're going to want. They're just never going to be full and lovely, and if you could get some more green to break up that pavement in there, I think you would be a much better design.
I think we can look at that, but one of the things that's required as part of the variance is the location of the parking, because our parking is within the setback. So by providing some green space, we'll have to move things around, but I wanted to ascertain your feeling with us and the request for the waiver with the extent of the parking as shown. Certainly, we can add some green spaces, move things around, but if we're going to be restrictive of where we're putting things, I'd like to know that up front.
Maybe should we go over the waivers so we see what the limitations are?
I think your engineer in the review letter has pointed out some variance requirements. We have the different Category 1 and Category 2 uses and the setbacks required. Category 1 is the 125-foot setback, and it's shown on this plan as I have 2 lines, they're in red. I'm not sure how well they show up, but we have the 125-foot setback that runs pretty much through the existing buildings here and pretty much along the edge of the track. And 75 feet away from that is the 200-foot setback. The surface parking lot, if they're pink, I think. I'm not, I believe you have a black and white print. They're on my plan is red or pink. I'm not sure if they show up on yours. The surface parking lot is a Category 1 use, which requires 170 or 125-foot setback. Right now, let me get my scale. Right now, we have the edge of the parking, these several spaces here at 50 feet off of the property line. The maintenance building is a Category 2 use, which requires a 200-foot setback. That 200-foot setback line is here. Our maintenance building is shown over in this corner, which is the same location we had shown it when we were here before. And that building is 70 feet off of this property line, and roughly 107 feet off of the property line to the west. The auxiliary gym was a Category 2 use, which required a 200-foot setback. As Carl said, that had been shown before here. We have moved that, so we no longer need a variance for that. The soccer field and track. Now, there is an existing soccer field in this area here that's being relocated over here, so the soccer field is being relocated. The track there, that is a Category 2 use, which requires a 200-foot setback, and we have located the track at the Category 1 setback line of 125 feet. We're proposing 2 building additions, or 2 small wing additions to this building here. We have kept those uses within the Category 1 setback line, but as the engineer pointed out, the ordinance requires 45 feet between buildings or groups of buildings. And we have approximately 23 feet with the new building addition, so a variance would be required for that. So basically, they're the variances that are involved with the project.
Could you maybe give us a little color as to why? I mean, we understand you want the variances. There's some pretty significant variances. So can you kind of explain to us why you can't solve the problem elsewhere, or what's so critical about these specific variances?
Well, the intent is to try to get a track on the site. And with the location of the buildings and trying to move this over, and let me step back one more, that there's a front yard variance required for the track also. That there's really no place we can fit it without the variance.
Yeah, but I mean, the track variance doesn't bother me personally that much, but the parking lot variance close to the property line, the maintenance shed, although that's a wonderful place for it, unfortunately, it's a pretty significant variance you need. So, for example, why couldn't some of the parking lose one of the soccer fields and move it up there? I know it's not ideal, but why isn't that a solution? Why do you need 4 fields?
Can I defer to the school on that one?
It doesn't change the number of fields, and currently we have probably 18, not all field sports on the varsity level in the high school, but we also have a junior high school, grades 6, 7, and 8. So in the fall season and the spring season, we have a maximum number of teams that are trying to play. It could be, 2 from the junior school and 2 from the high school. So the goal was to try to keep everybody happy and all the athletes playing at the same time, not stagger the games, try to have them start at the same time so that everybody's leaving campus at the same time.
Is there a way for you to put one of those soccer fields back where you have all that surface parking? Because I would imagine that the neighbors would have much less trouble with a soccer field in their backyard than a parking lot in their backyard. If I were the neighbor, that's how I would feel.
I believe you're talking in this area here where some of the existing parking is now. I know the school just went through and renovated, put a lot of work into renovating these fields. And given the fact that these areas are already covered with impervious and the proximity to the existing buildings and where the parking is now, I think it's the desire of the school is to keep the parking where it is now.
I can't help but notice that there are only 3 fields on the existing.
There are 3 fields colored. We have another field here, which is a softball field, and it sort of overlaps, and I guess I was lax in coloring it up, but it is labeled here as Field A, Field B, Field C, and Field D. I think it's just this area here is a softball field, and it is a soccer area also. It's just not colored that way.
You play soccer on the north side of that driveway?
That is a practice field. And it
Okay. I mean,
and they do play there, yes.
It's like a whole stand of trees.
There is an area here that's a field.
Okay.
It's tight, but they do it.
Did you consider putting in a parking structure? I know that maybe that wouldn't be preferable to the neighbors. I don't know, but first of all, I didn't look at the numbers, but you probably have a lot of impervious. But just in terms of your setbacks, it would suggest trying to find a spot within all your setbacks to meet your parking. You might have to go vertically. And we didn't even talk about the parking numbers. I mean, aren't the cars like stacked or something now? And
the cars are stacked now. Student parking in front of Trexler is stacked here. They have a gravel area here. The old tennis courts are used for stacked parking. So there's the intent is to sort of get the student parking and spread it out into more manageable parking stalls instead of having everybody stacking one behind the other.
So I assume that currently you have, obviously you need more parking for your own purposes, but you probably don't meet the current codes for parking. Did you look at the new numbers and whether that
I
meets?
looked at the code, and and maybe it's something that I have to sit down with the zoning officer, but I was having difficulty figuring out what the code requirements are for parking. The ordinance, as I read it, and again, I should probably sit down with Kevin and go over things, but the school itself, it talks about assembly areas and other things. I was having difficulty putting a defined number on it.
Can you explain to us the 2 building additions that, or at least the 1 building addition that gets into the required 45-foot setback?
Carl, can you talk
What's the
about
purpose of that?
One of the ideas for the master plan was to create a new performing arts center, and it was decided not to move forward with that option because that would probably be a very large structure and one more thing on the site. So the decision was to utilize what is a multi-purpose room in this area right here. But in order to make that function properly for a school of this size, they need additional spaces for music classrooms and so forth. Most best located in the proximity of the theater space. So there was, and again, maintaining the setback here The only really ways to do it were to go out on the sides, with the recognition that, we're getting closer to the more recent building here. The logic was that the two buildings are already connected, so having it closer there would probably not be an issue. Again, that's for the building code official to ultimately decide that. Both the existing and new buildings will be sprinklered too, so that hopefully that will grant some relief to that as well. So that was where that came from.
And the reason to keep it 45 feet is for safety, fire?
The building code would address the closeness of the buildings, as we saw with the first application. Building construction really dictates for the use what materials are used given the proximity. It's an ordinance requirement. Where it came from and how it started, I do not know.
But it's still a requirement of 45 feet?
Yes.
And there's no specific concern you have relative to a variance for that, other than just the fact that you're granting a variance? I mean, there's no safety issue, there's no fire or something?
No, I think one of the things that we had initially thought of, do they need to go out both sides of the building, and can that be consolidated on one side or the other? I agree with not encroaching into the setbacks on the western property line there. So if you're going to seek a variance, that to me is the better of the two options. But there does look like there's some opportunity to maybe go out on the right side of that, the southern side of that building versus the southern and the northern.
Yeah, if I can agree to that, absolutely. And there's a possibility even, one looks like a skinnier addition, one's a wider. We could probably switch those or certainly try to reduce the additions on this side. But we thought to at least get it out there and vet it out, the possibility if a variance could be, if that can't be worked out, that this, that there'd be consideration to this as a possibility. But, we're really not into the design of it, just knowing we need that additional square foot on both levels. There's also expansion to there's a lower level to that building, which is where the cafeteria is for the girls. That's undersized, so that it's part of that two-story addition.
Yeah,
well.
I'd encourage you to cut back on as many of variances as possible, as well, not as well as the impact of the variances.
The tricky part is the more we add over here, then it's going to get closer to that building too. So you'll be in the same situation. So,
yeah,
I think there'll be some variance in some respect to additions on that building, and that's what we're.
Yeah,
like
you might have bigger fish to fry, but.
Right, I agree.
Is there any possibility of moving some of the parking from the north side of the campus over to the south side? Next to the mansion, next to the Connolly Center? Coming off that new proposed driveway in, it would seem like it would be an ideal spot to put some parking to access those first two fields. And what's I'm saying, I don't, if the contours hurt us there, Dave, or just an idea to get out of the easement would maybe eliminate one of your variances. Because you're kind of putting all your parking to the lower left of the campus, and you still have to get to the upper right of the campus, so it's not like it's convenient.
I mean, we do have a flatter area up in
Right.
here in which to work with. We've delineated
Up here.
the steep slopes 20% greater in here, so there, while there is more contour lines, it is
How about
steeper.
right
It's
next,
not in the
right
very
next to
steep.
the mansion, Dave? If you come up where the new driveway's coming in,
There, that's.
right where the new driveway meets the old driveway, just to the, would be the left of that. Yeah, or to the left of that.
Between the mansion and the new driveway.
Yeah.
They're already recommending that the driveway get moved anyway.
Well,
So
but that-
it gives even more room. Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
That's a golf course over here, right? Yeah. What about right here?
It's a what? I'm sorry, Skip.
Ed, could we hear from the neighbors to hear their comments
Yeah.
about this?
Yeah, I think we're,
Before we give,
yeah, we're not going to do too much more here, but I just wanted to get that in. Go ahead, Dave, I'm sorry.
Ed, you're talking about this area.
Yeah, could you do something there to bring some of that? Just curious.
Yeah, there are some trees. I mean,
Okay.
there are some nice trees in there. Yes, there are. I mean, we're.
Nicely around the trees.
Yeah.
We're trying to, I guess, work within what we have to the best of our ability.
Yeah.
Decrepit along that tree
Just some thought. Why don't we do that? Not that we don't have to go to public comment, but I think we'd all like to hear it. So if we have public comment, can we bring the public comment forward at this point? Anybody like to come forward? Jim? On crutches? You gonna make it? Thank you. We got a mic, if you want to bring the mic back to you? Do it that way. Guys, can somebody just give that to Jim, make it easy for him? He can talk from there. Thank you.
Jim Greenfield on behalf of the Larchwood Road neighbors who, that's the residential area immediately to the north of this property, and the area that's in very close proximity both to the proposed track and the rather large parking lot, and also to the maintenance building that likewise does not meet setback requirements. We've sort of glossed over the steep slopes issue. There is a collection of steep slopes at the northeast corner of this property. Yeah, that'd be great.
Jim, I'm sorry, I didn't. You're here speaking on behalf of several neighbors. Is that what I caught?
That's correct.
Thank you. I didn't catch the beginning of that.
In that area is where the steep slopes are. This property slopes from its northeast corner really in a pretty much a northeasterly direction for the most part, down toward, across some of the residential properties and down toward Spring Mill Road, Sproul Road at that point. I know the applicant has taken the position that those slopes are man-made, but from a legal standpoint, it makes no difference whether they're man-made or natural. Certainly, you all remember the 400 South Wayne property. As I'm sure you know, that was appealed to the Court of Common Pleas, which, in a written opinion, held that the Radnor ordinance is not specific as to any difference between man-made and natural steep slopes, and therefore man-made slopes are no more susceptible to violation than natural steep slopes. And when I'm finished speaking, some of the neighbors I know are going to want to talk about their experiences with stormwater. This is a situation that's likely to exacerbate the problems that they've been experiencing for a long time over there. I think that the Planning Commission has raised some very interesting questions about whether it's necessary to locate that entire parking lot in that configuration, in that location, which, as the applicant has conceded, is well within the required setback of 125 feet. Structured parking is certainly something that it would make sense for Notre Dame to look at. I know it's more expensive, but it would alleviate that problem. And certainly there appear to be other locations, as you've pointed out, where parking could be placed. And the maintenance building violates two setback requirements, so perhaps there's another location for that as well. This is it's a very ambitious plan in the sense that it really seeks to maximize the use of the property. And I certainly understand why Notre Dame wants to do that. They're in a competitive situation and they want their facilities to be as good as they possibly can be. But the setback requirements and some of the other requirements that are violated here are in the code for a purpose, and that is to protect contiguous uses, especially the residential uses to the north in this case. So at this point, I would like to turn it over to some of the neighbors and have them talk about the stormwater and perhaps other conditions that they have observed at the present time and in the past.
Hi, I'm Ken Hurley, and do I need this?
You can use that one, Ken.
Hello?
Either one.
Either one. My name is Ken Hurley. We live on the northeastern corner there of the property, and we've lived there now for about 8 years, and we do have a very, very serious stormwater problem that exists today, where every time any storm of any size, you will see virtual rivers of water going down Sproul Road, going down Larchwood, down the gutterways to Sproul Road, and then going on down toward that stream that's there at the bottom. There's always puddles, every single time there's any storm of any size. So there already exists today a very, very serious stormwater issue there, and obviously this would seriously exacerbate that. Second of all, just the property itself, I'll say aesthetically or whatever, I mean, it looks like there are some pretty just steep berms and slopes, and at least from our property, we go from looking out at a soccer field to looking actually up at a track, because the track is elevated at that end of the property. And so, not to mention the driveway that goes right through almost our backyard compared to where it goes through now. So that's really all I have. I don't know if John or Greg, you want to add anything?
Hi, I'm Greg Enders. So we live here, 709 Archwood Lane. We've lived here for 16 years, and we've just upped for another 10 with our mortgage. And one of the reasons why we chose our house is this beautiful woods here, which is not only very aesthetic, but is a very functional buffer, basically, between our properties. I've counted 180 trees, I think, that would be removed with the plans here. And to be succinct, in my view, this is really the poster child for why there are setbacks. In our view, the new field is going to be shoehorned in right behind us. And I think we'll lose most of the buffer that we have, so that we'll now feel that the school and the activities are right behind our backyard. So those are the main issues for us.
Thank you.
Good evening, John Acuff. We're right there. I pretty much had the same feelings as everybody else. The concern that I originally had was the road going behind the house. The elevation of it would have been to the top of the berm that is existing there now. They have lowered it, but that's been lowered by 4 to 5 feet. We're concerned with traffic that may be generated through that exit. It's also my understanding, and I wish there was some elevation indications on the map, but the track also is a concern from the elevation of the standpoint that that's going to be higher in some places than the new road that they're going to build. Overall, I think the value of our property is going to diminish. Nancy and I have lived there 14 years, and we've enjoyed having Notre Dame as neighbors, and we certainly try to cooperate as much as possible. But, as a resident for a number of years, we're greatly concerned with that addition, and I think it would impose on all of our residents in Larchwood Lane. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
So I ask a question. Is the track higher than the road? I thought it was the property line, down 4 feet the road, and the track was lower than the road.
Well, we have variable grading through here, which is better seen, I think, on the proposed grading plan. The track is set at elevation, I believe it was, I think it's 385. I have to apologize for the scale. Being that the...
I can give the basics.
Hey, you're...
This is the blow up here.
Yes, but that doesn't have the grading on it.
I got it on. So this here is 14 feet of rise from there to there. And the Hurleys from their backyard here would look up about 12 feet to this corner of the track. So this is actually substantially higher than their backyard right here. And as was mentioned before, behind the cuffs here, this is about level. And then behind our property here, it's actually a drop to the field. So that's in order to get the field level.
Did a better job than I did, thank you.
So you could, with more money, drop the field instead of doing what you're doing? Well, you actually are cutting and filling as it is now.
We're cutting and filling. We're trying to balance that. The problem comes in if we were to drop the field to eliminate some of the grade rise at where we're closer to Sproul Road, we would have to shift the track closer to Sproul Road in order to get the grades to work at the back end of the field.
How about if you have all the kids run cross-country instead of track, and then it can go up and down?
I can't answer that one. But that's where we stand with the grading, because of trying to get the field level in an area that's sloping. Now, Jim did say something about steep slopes. I want to point out that while the slopes are a little bit steeper there along the site, the steep slopes that were delineated on the plan are these little bits in purple here. These are steep slopes. I don't think there are permit plans on file. I would have to check, but these slopes are adjacent to the existing fields. There's a small little detention basin that was apparently constructed at one time back in this corner. So these slopes here are in that area of the basin, in this area here, and here there's a debris pile. I think it was our surveyors noted as a mulch pile, so that was picked up in the topography. Steep slopes regulated by your ordinance are 20% and greater. These slopes here are not regulated steep slopes, so while Jim is correct in that they're steeper than the rest of the site, they are not steep slopes. Now, you're looking at 1 foot contours here, which make, which exaggerate the grading a little bit. Most plans show a 2 foot contour, so there's a lot of contour lines in there, but the slopes there are not 20% and greater.
I have a different question for the engineers, real quick. Prior to this plan, when was your last campus 10-year plan submitted to the township? First of all, do you have a 10-year plan submitted to the town, an up-to-date 10-year plan to the township as per the ordinance for PI?
This is what we're looking at. This is the intent of that long-range plan.
Okay, but you guys have built some buildings and done some field work in the last few years, and I'm just curious, prior to this plan, where is your last 10-year plan up to date?
I am not aware.
Okay. The reason I ask is this, because I feel for you with the property. I do. I feel how tight it is. My daughter went to another school that actually was a smaller piece of property than this, so I know the constraints. However, a couple of times tonight, people from representatives from your school have made mention of constraints that you have about moving parking and things, because you just did field work. I know you built a building a few years ago.
Let me point out that the field work that was done, there were existing fields.
No,
They returfed them, if you will, and put in an irrigation system. So I don't think that's long-range planning. I mean, the fields were there.
Appreciate that. The reason I'm saying what I'm saying is that some of the comments that we got about why you're trying to put the parking so close and in the setbacks and near the neighbors is due to work that you've done prior to this. And a 10-year plan would have been helpful, perhaps, to you all maybe you would have deferred some of that field work, some of that expense on those in looking at the possibility of needing more parking, wanting a track down the lane, an expanded arts center, what have you, that you perhaps wouldn't, the school perhaps wouldn't have spent the money on the fields, that area might be better suited for parking, not from a visual standpoint. Believe me, I love looking at the facility. I literally go by it every single day, and it's beautiful to look at coming up Godfrey and on 320, and I can completely appreciate why, never mind fitting it in standpoint, but from an aesthetic standpoint, why you would want to try to push the parking to the back and the maintenance shed to the back and all that. But from a setback standpoint, it's in the worst possible spots for the neighbors. And the thought in my head, to get back to the 10-year plan, was that I don't remember seeing a written 10-year plan from this institution. I thought we were supposed to have one from all institutions. And that was kind of my question, actually, to staff, not to the applicant.
It was one of the things I had heard earlier of a master plan, that this was being submitted as a master plan. All indications from our standpoint was that this was a sketch plan building off of what was submitted earlier. We have not done an analysis yet, not just for this institution, but the other ones, of where we're at overall for the township on the long-range institutional plan. It's something that we're going to be working on over the course of the next year and get everybody hopefully up to speed shortly thereafter. So we're a little confused from a technical standpoint. This was reviewed just as a basic sketch plan for potential development. I heard tonight that it's a master plan, which I assume...
Well, I think the intent here is that the school would like to start with some of their fundraising and to start with some of these projects. But in the grand scheme of things, this is presented as sort of a longer range plan, so they can develop what they want to do first and when. And like I said earlier, in order to plan ahead and do that, we know that certain variances would be required with this plan, and that's why we're here tonight.
So I guess, Kevin, one thing we should check on is whether or not because I know there was a building built here 5-6 years ago, something like that. 8
years ago.
If they had a 10-year plan submitted with that application.
That I don't know.
You wouldn't know. It predates all of you over there, but
going to finish it. There are technical requirements in the code for what that plan is required to have in any updates. And again, this was not reviewed in that context, so any consideration of accepting this and looking at this as that long-term, long-range plan, staff hasn't had the opportunity to review it from that. And just looking at the information that's required, I don't know that what was submitted even comes close to the requirements of the ordinance from that standpoint.
I think maybe the last time we were here, we did talk about some other possibilities we looked at for the track in that stadium, track in that field, putting it, even if say the fields weren't renovated, or even if they were, of trying to fit it here, which would just fit, but you would eliminate basically 3 fields, and there wasn't room to kind of relocate them along here. Plus, then you'd have this, you'd also have the setback that we need a variance along the front as well, and that would be, and then you'd have an even larger sort of change in the nature of the appearance from the general public to have it along that road. So as you noted, unfortunately for them, the goal here was to put it towards the back of our property and try to intensify the buffer along here as much as possible. So that was where that was the kind of concept derived from.
I know some of the other institutions, the approach they've taken with this. I mean, other area private schools come to mind, some in Lower Merion, some in Radnor. One of your options, although I recognize it's not ideal, but is to acquire property field space in other locations. I mean, that's a very common thing with the independent schools, is that they simply do not have the space to meet their parking and their, what they would like to offer for their athletic program and meet their missions. So they acquire off-site locations for their field space. That's pretty common in Radnor, and it's pretty common in Lower Merion. So I don't know if that's something else that, it feels like you're trying to fit a square peg into a round hole.
I think you're exactly right, and I think that's one of the goals, that would be a difference maker for them if they could say to their families that, all of your 6th graders through 12th graders can actually participate and not have to travel. Now, they still have to go for track now and for tennis across the street and some other things. So again, that's part of the benefit of trying to keep everybody, especially the younger kids, on site and not have to bus them.
No, I appreciate that. I'm just,
yeah,
I'm
sorry.
not sure it's going to be
That's the thought
possible
back.
here.
Yeah.
Right.
One of the issues it seems to be, somebody mentioned the stormwater. There's a huge amount of stormwater that runs off of here. Is that true? I mean, in its current configuration, there's already a lot of stormwater coming down, and this is going to is this going to exacerbate that, or is it sort of
Right now,
a wash?
according to the topography, we have a ridge line pretty much in the area where we had originally shown the road before we had shifted it.
Mm-hmm.
The area to the south of that does flow down to Sproul Road, and it eventually works its way down Sproul Road. The area on the north side of the ridge line goes down through the property, so I can't say that a lot of water from the site runs off to the adjoining properties, but it is directed towards Sproul Road.
Yeah.
As part of this, we will be required to do stormwater management, where our initial concept is to provide a recharge and a detention facility beneath the soccer field and the track area to promote as much recharge as we can. But just by the nature of the site now, I don't see a lot of our site water running off directly into the neighbor's backyards. Yes, it probably goes to Sproul Road and down Sproul Road and probably does work its way down Larchwood, but well, Godfrey's another situation where we have another ridge line here. There's the topography of the site it's directing water down Godfrey and towards
Right to
Sproul
Lawrence
Road.
Lane, right to my neighbor. Not that it's all you, but I literally have my neighbor on the corner of Darby Paoli and Lawrence Lane floods like you cannot believe in the last 10 years since we've lived there. And I'm not going to say it's you directly. There's many factors, but it's an impact at the bottom of the hill.
Okay, why don't we move to summary comments? There's a sketch plan. Yes, sir.
Can I make one more point?
Sure, grab a mic. Where's that mic? Dave, you want to give that to Jim? We'll finish up. Was that the last comment?
I have a question as well.
If I may, I'd like to suggest one way of looking at this. If this plan is going to move forward and the applicant is going to go to the zoning board for variances, at some point the planning commission is probably going to be asked to comment on what it thinks of those variances. So what I would suggest to you is that if it's your inclination as you sit here tonight that these variances are not a salutary thing for the neighborhood, then I would suggest that you advise the applicant of that so that we don't have to go through the time and expense of having zoning hearings on these variances, and that Notre Dame can then go back and revise a plan to eliminate the variances and the interference with neighborhood property interests.
Thank you. Was there a question? Go ahead, grab that microphone. You can go ahead and ask that question.
I just had one question of facilities. So right now the woods is used to basically dump all the clippings and the tree debris, leaves, et cetera. Where would that be done on the new plan where there's really not much woods left? At that point, we may just have a contractor do the leaves and take them off site when he as part of his job.
Thank you. Okay, summary comment. Anybody? Julie, you want to start?
Yeah, I think, I feel for the school because it's a tight site, and I know they want to be competitive, and it's a beautiful campus to look at, but I couldn't possibly recommend these variances. I think it would have a tremendous impact on the neighbors, and it's not just that, it's also that that large park paved pervious area is sort of unforgiving in the lower corner of the site. Yes, just because you can draw something in on a pencil on the paper and say that it fits, it doesn't fit. You can't just, there's a reason we have all these setbacks, and we can't just ignore them. If you were saying, we could put this great track in, but we need another 2 feet, or, we can put this great maintenance building in, but we need, 3 more feet over here, is that, that's a reasonable variance. To basically say, well, we don't need to have setbacks is, I don't see really where you're going with that.
Steve?
Yeah, I'm a little concerned about the number and the severity of the variances, and generally I'm a little more relaxed, I think, on these topics than a lot of the people up here, or some anyway. And so, yeah, and again, I feel for the campus. I really do. I understand it. I think a lot of the things can be dealt with. The parking can be relocated. The track is a big of an issue. I mean, that's just a difficult, and it does seem to have, 14-foot elevation there is a pretty significant impact for the one neighbor. I kind of forget your name. I will tell you, the maintenance shop, I know it's a big variance. I would like to understand a little more what the true impact of that is besides just the numbers. It just seems to fit nicely there, but I can't speak to what the true impact is of the neighbors. So I'm going to reserve that one open. I'd say the two variances for the building at the bottom, I'm less concerned about that. They bother me less. So I guess from my vantage point, I think you could relocate the parking and deal with it elsewhere. The track, I don't know the solution on that one, and I'd keep an open mind on the maintenance shop. So,
Skip, anything to add?
Yeah, I was looking at the overall site plan, and I speculated to myself and to Steve that I wondered if Larchwood had ever been part of the school grounds. So, for whatever reason, some time ago, the school sold off the ground they need today and created the hardship they have today. I think it's too much for the site in general. I do think that one of the worst variance issues is the parking, and maybe you have to look at that structure if you can go forward with this.
Doug?
Yeah, it just seems to be a little too close. I'm really concerned about the stormwater issues along the side of the thing, and the parking, particularly where they have the standard trees right now. I mean, that if you can move parking to the opposite side and make it so that the track is not as close to the side lines. But again, minor variances are one thing. This does seem to be a rather large set of them, but okay.
Sue?
I think Julia said it very eloquently.
I just want to revisit the traffic that if you were going to undertake this type of project, I think you really do need to evaluate what best serves your campus as well as the traffic flow, because maybe switching the entrances makes sense, but you can't do that without at least a rough traffic study. And the variances that you're asking for, they are pretty extensive. If the neighbors were fine with them, we'd look at them differently.
Do you know, separate from the entire plan, actually, Regina did just say something to me that occurred to me. Looking at that intersection, we all know how tricky the intersection is at Sproul and Godfrey in the entrance. I do wonder if a reversal of the in and out, where cars would come out of Notre Dame at the corner of Godfrey, rather than trying to take a left-hand turn into there, if that wouldn't help this campus separate from the entire plan, and that taking a left into the school down at that northern entrance, if it wouldn't help. And that's why I was asking about the whole traffic thing. Completely separate from this plan, that may help you in general with this at this facility.
Okay, thank you. I think everything was said. I'm not going to add anything. So, applicant, thank you very much. Sounds like the key is to get working with the neighborhood, and we will see you soon, I'm sure. Thank you very much. Old business, nominations for next year's chair and vice chair. I would like to nominate Julia Herr as the chair going into 2013 and Skip Kunda as the vice chair. I need a second on that, if I could.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So we need that to go off to the commissioners for 2013. And our appointment for the shade tree, Doug has volunteered to continue that. So I'll take it Doug, I guess you can nominate yourself, huh? How about that? I'll nominate Doug for Shade Tree again in 2013. I'll take a second for that. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
And that passes also. Any new business? Thursday, 7:30, right, Sue?
7:30 Thursday,
Thank you,
correct.
Kevin. 7:30 Thursday night. Any old business? New business? Public participation? Meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much. See you Thursday at 7:30. And we'll keep it to 2 hours. 9 o'clock, we'll go to public comment, and we'll be out here at 9:30. Thank you, staff. Thank you, everyone.